Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Jessica Heeringa. Jessica Heeringa was born on July 16, 1987, in Norton Shores, Michigan, to a humble family, and that included a sister. At 22, she had a son named Zahn with her long-term partner Dakota Quail Dyer, and by 25, the couple was still together and raising Zahn in a rented home. Jessica worked as a manager at a local Exxon gas station near Lake Michigan, where she was well-liked by customers for her friendly nature. She often worked extra hours to provide for Zahn, and her ambition was evident in her diary entries, which expressed her desire to pursue a college degree in accounting. However, financial constraints prevented her from achieving this goal. Dakota, her partner and the father of her child, was unable to fully support their family, leading to disagreements, and their relationship was strained. Despite being engaged, their wedding plans were repeatedly delayed due to various circumstances. On April 26, 2013, she started the day by shopping at a nearby store around 3 p.m. and then drove to work. Arriving at 4:35 p.m., Jessica began her night shift at the Exxon gas station. As she began her shift, she was the only employee on duty that night. At 11:14 p.m., a customer called 911 to report a strange situation at the Exxon station. He had entered the store to pay for his gas but found no one to take his payment. The store was unattended, with the door open and lights on. The customer informed the dispatcher 911, "The store is empty, but there are 2 cars parked outside, mine and another one. It looks unusual." Police officers arrived at the Exxon gas station about 10 minutes after the call. They inspected the petrol station and found no signs of a struggle or disturbance. Everything was in order. Inside the store, police discovered Jessica's coat and purse, containing $400, and her car and house keys in the back room. A single drop of Jessica's blood was found near the back door. Police also found a cap from a Walther P.22 semi-automatic pistol's laser sight and 2 watch batteries on the floor. The cash register was intact, with all the money still in it. The last transaction was recorded at 10:52 p.m. for a lighter. Unfortunately, the gas station did not have interior surveillance cameras. Jessica's pack of cigarettes was left on the counter next to the cash register, suggesting she had temporarily stepped away. Her car was locked and parked outside, but Jessica was nowhere to be found. She had mysteriously vanished. The police discovered that the gas station was unattended, so they contacted the owner and informed her. The owner then asked a nearby manager to come to the gas station for protection. The police also notified Jessica's family that she was missing. Her parents began searching for clues and called her friends to see if they had any information. One friend reported being at the gas station around 8 to 9 p.m. that day and said everything seemed normal. However, a fellow employee who arrived to close the station shortly after recalled a suspicious incident. Around 11 p.m., the employee and her boyfriend drove by the station on a motorcycle and saw a silver Chrysler Town Country minivan parked near the back door with its door open. They initially thought Jessica might be involved in a theft, so they kept watching. The employee saw a young man with disheveled wavy hair and an orange sweatshirt near the minivan. He repeatedly opened and closed the rear door before driving away. Further investigation revealed a surveillance video from a nearby building showing a silver Chrysler passing the Exxon gas station at 11:02 p.m. The police also spoke to Christian, who reported seeing the man in the minivan talking to Jessica earlier. Christian initially believed the man was just flirting with Jessica because of her attractiveness. A composite sketch of the suspect in Jessica's disappearance was created with the help of Christian, who had seen the man near a minivan. The suspect was described as a young male with light skin, dark wavy hair, a stocky build, and approximately 6 feet tall. 3 days after Jessica went missing, the sketch was released. In spite of police received many calls, but no information was available that helped the case. A main issue in the investigation was the large number of silver Chrysler minivans in the United States. Specifically, in Michigan, there were 15,000 registered vehicles of the same kind. This made it difficult to identify the driver of the minivan related to Jessica's disappearance. Jessica Heeringa's boyfriend, Dakota, was initially suspected in her disappearance due to their frequent arguments. However, Dakota denied this and cooperated with the investigation, stating he was at home with their son on the night of her disappearance. Since Dakota didn't have a car, he couldn't have gone to her workplace, and his phone records confirmed his alibi. After verifying his story, the police excluded him from the list of suspects. Further investigation revealed that Jessica's friendly and outgoing personality helped her attract many admirers. Jess Ammerman, a 37-year-old married plumber, was one such admirer. On the evening of her disappearance, around 9:30 p.m., Jess visited Jessica at the gas station, confessed his feelings, and claimed he was willing to divorce his wife for her. However, Jessica rejected his advances. He then left the station, called his wife, and spoke with her for about 50 minutes before returning home. After undergoing a polygraph test and being interrogated and interviewed along with his wife, the police also cleared Jess Ammerman as a suspect. Rob Fallett, the brother of the manager at the Exxon gas station, where Jessica worked, was initially considered a suspect in her disappearance. Around 9 p.m. on the day she vanished, Rob visited the station and reported that Jessica appeared upset. When he asked her what was wrong, she shared that she was having family problems. Rob offered to let her stay with him, but she declined the offer. Fallett then left to go night fishing in a nearby lake. After investigating Rob's alibi, detectives discovered his phone records supported his claim and he was cleared of the crime. Search and rescue operations for Jessica were launched with helicopters, specially trained dogs, and thorough searches of homes, businesses, wells, wooded areas, and Lake Michigan. However, no leads were found, causing the case to reach a standstill. About a year later, in February 2014, a similar incident occurred in Michigan. A young woman with a similar appearance to Jessica was kidnapped and attacked by a man while walking home late at night. She was taken to his apartment, where she was attacked, and her life was threatened. The woman was eventually released after several hours. The suspect, 42-year-old Brad Allen Mason. Mason was eventually found by police, but he resisted arrest, threatening officers with a fake gun. Then, he was fatally shot during the confrontation. Brad had a history of crime, including being convicted of kidnapping in 2004 and arrested for indecent exposure in 2011. In 2014, he lived in a dorm near the Exxon gas station where Jessica worked. Despite this, investigators couldn't find any evidence linking Mason to Jessica's disappearance. 2 years after Jessica disappeared, a similar incident happened in 2016. A young woman was walking home from a friend's party late at night when she got lost on a dark street. A man in a silver minivan stopped and asked if she was okay, offering to give her a ride. She refused the ride but asked to use his phone. The man agreed, but only if she got into the minivan. Once she was inside, he locked the door, said his phone was dead, and he pulled out his gun, asked her to keep quiet. Then he started driving. The woman was feeling extremely unwell and nauseated, so she asked the driver to roll down the window for her. She quickly took advantage of the opportunity and jumped out of the moving vehicle through the window, running to a nearby house for safety. The driver quickly sped away and escaped. The victim immediately called the police and provided a detailed description of her kidnapper. By examining footage from nearby surveillance cameras, the police were able to identify the license plate number of the vehicle, a silver Chrysler Town & Country. The investigation eventually identified the driver as Jeffrey Willis, 46 years old. Jeffrey Willis, a factory worker, lived a reclusive and humble life with no criminal record. When police found and searched his minivan, they discovered a semi-automatic Walther P22 pistol. It was discovered that this pistol had been reported stolen by a coworker of Jeffrey some time ago. Jeffrey was arrested and taken into custody. Upon searching his residence, police found a collection of various BDSM items, including handcuffs, chains, ropes, gags, a vibrator, a video camera, and a bullet matching the Walther P22 pistol. They also discovered medical supplies and sedatives, which included insulin syringes with unknown substances and disposable gloves. Investigators found a diagram of the woman's body, with some parts marked. Upon examining his computer, several distressing videos were found, showing scenes of young women being kidnapped. A hidden hard drive discovered in a ventilation duct contained secretly recorded footage of Jeffrey's female neighbors swimming. Furthermore, on his computer, police discovered a folder labeled Victims that included 2 subfolders. The first subfolder was named after missing woman Jessica, and the second subfolder contained information about a murdered woman named Rebecca. Rebecca Bletch, a 36-year-old woman who suffered a tragic fate. Approximately 1 year after Jessica went missing, Rebecca was murdered on June 29, 2014. Rebecca had gone out for a run in the evening but never returned home. She was discovered by her neighbors lying on the road, with her clothing disheveled. Initially, it was believed that she had been hit by a car. Although Rebecca was unconscious, she still had a pulse when found. Emergency services were immediately called, but unfortunately, she succumbed to her injuries before she could be saved. Autopsy reports later revealed that Rebecca died from 3 gunshot wounds to her back and head, along with multiple bruises on her wrists and legs. At the time of Rebecca's death, the suspect has not yet been identified. However, 2 years after Jeffrey's arrest, investigators uncovered new evidence linking Rebecca's murder to the handgun found in his small truck. Prosecutors alleged that Jeffrey had attempted to abduct Rebecca and bring her back to his home, but when Rebecca resisted, he shot her and fled the scene. Despite his denial, forensic analysis discovered Rebecca's DNA on a glove found in Jeffrey's residence. As a result, he was convicted of Rebecca's murder and received a life sentence. While serving his sentence, Jeffrey faced additional charges related to the kidnapping of Jessica, despite he consistently denying any involvement in her disappearance. Nonetheless, a review of his phone records revealed that he was present at the Exxon gas station where Jessica was last seen on the night she vanished. He then went to his grandfather's house, about 13 minutes from the station. When police arrived at that house, they discovered something surprising. Although the front door was secured with heavy locking, the police were able to break in easily. What they discovered was disturbing. In the basement, they found a large stash of cleaning supplies, including various powders and bleaches, that had all been manufactured in early 2013, around the same time Jessica disappeared. It was found that Jeffrey had been absent from his job on April 27, 2013, the day after Jessica's disappearance. Colleagues reported that his absence was unusual. When he returned to work a few days later, he had noticeable deep scratches on his face and hands. This has made people who know him suspicious. A woman who visited the gas station on April 25, the evening before Jessica vanished, contacted the police. She had arrived at the station late that evening and expressed her concern to Jessica about being alone at such a late hour. Jessica acknowledged her concern with a nod. At that moment, an unknown man inside the station overheard the conversation and reassured the visitor, saying, "Don't worry, Jessica has customers who look after her." The man then left the gas station. Despite the stranger's reassurance, the visitor remained concerned about Jessica's safety and waited in her car outside until Jessica finished her shift and headed home. Unfortunately, Jessica disappeared the following day. In 2016, the witness positively identified Jeffrey as the unknown man, recalling his presence at the gas station. Further investigation revealed that Jeffrey had frequently visited the Exxon gas station, interacting with Jessica at least 15 times prior to her disappearance. Kevin Bloom, a 48-year-old prison guard and Jeffrey's cousin, was arrested. During questioning, Kevin's statements were inconsistent, ultimately leading him to confess. He revealed details about Rebecca's death that were not publicly known at the time, and also admitted to helping Jeffrey hide Jessica's body. Kevin described how, on April 27, the day after Jessica's abduction, Jeffrey invited him to a party at his house. When Kevin arrived, he found Jessica lying lifeless and bound on the floor. Kevin and Jeffrey wrapped Jessica's body in a sheet and drove to a forest, where Jeffrey had already dug a grave. They buried Jessica and then returned home. When the police asked Kevin to take them to the burial site, he had difficulty remembering the exact location. Despite searching the forest for a while, he was unable to pinpoint the spot where they had buried Jessica's body. The trial of Jeffrey began, even though Jessica's body had not been found. The prosecution presented strong evidence to charge Jeffrey with kidnapping and murder. They alleged that he had been stalking Jessica for a long time. On April 26, 2013, Jeffrey allegedly parked near the gas station's entrance, went inside, and hit Jessica on the head with his gun. During the assault, the gun's laser sight cover fell off, and Jessica's blood was flowing to the floor. Jeffrey then allegedly dragged she out through the exit, put her in the back seat of his car, and drove her to his late grandfather's house. Forensic analysis of Jeffrey's devices revealed that he saved photos and news articles about the search for Jessica on his computer. As investigators followed the case, they found that he used a password that included her initials and the date April 27, 2013. This suggests that April 27, 2013 was likely the day she died, one day after her disappearance. Jeffrey maintained his innocence, claiming he was at home on the night Jessica was kidnapped. His lawyers pointed out that there was no direct evidence linking him to the crime, and no DNA evidence belonging to Jessica was found in his home or vehicle. Jeffrey's defense team argued that Jessica had been struggling with serious substance abuse problems in the time before her disappearance, suggesting that her kidnapping might be connected to her involvement in the illicit drug trade. Despite his claims of innocence, Jeffrey was found guilty of murdering Jessica and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Throughout the trial, he showed no remorse for his actions. Willis's cousin, Kevin Bloom, was also found guilty of helping to dispose of Jessica's body and received a sentence of 2 years in prison, followed by 5 years of probation. Years after Jeffrey's conviction, new information came to light that implicated him in an older, unsolved case. On October 17, 1996, the body of Angela Thorberg was found in Fruitport, Michigan, with her killer never identified. After further investigation, Ed Bloom, a 1988 high school graduate and Kevin Bloom's father, was linked to the murder of Angela Thorberg in 1996. However, later evidence suggested that it was Jeffrey who became a suspect in Angela Thorberg's death. It has been 10 years since Jessica went missing, but her body has still not been found. After her disappearance, a court battle took place over the custody of Jessica and Dakota's son, Zon. Jessica's husband, Dakota, sought custody, but ultimately lost the case to Jessica's family. Zon currently lives with his grandparents and relatives on his father's side. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Alyssa Burkett. Alyssa Burkett was born on December 31, 1995, in Mosquito, Texas, to Teresa and Burkett and Joshua Forey. She has 3 older sisters, Nikki, Madison, and Taylor, and 2 older brothers, Landon and Tyler. Alyssa showed creative talent from a young age. At the age of 7, she dreamed of becoming a fashion designer and even made her own clothes. Her grandfather, Russell Forey, a musician, encouraged Alyssa's passion, and at the age of 13, Alyssa decided to change her career path and pursue a career in law. Russell supported Alyssa's decision. After graduating from Royce City High School, Alyssa enrolled in a local college. When she was 18, Alyssa met a boy named Andrew Bird. He was 9 years older than her and seemed to be a mysterious bad boy. Despite her family's objections, Alyssa began pursuing Andrew. The relationship was unstable and complicated. Andrew did not work and relied on Alyssa for support. However, Andrew was very possessive, constantly monitoring Alyssa's every move. Her friends advised her to break up with Andrew many times, but Alyssa did not listen. In January 2019, 23-year-old Alyssa discovered that she was pregnant with Andrew's child. This unexpected pregnancy took Alyssa by surprise and forced her to rethink her future plans. Alyssa suspected that Andrew would not be a good father in the future, so Alyssa decided to break up with Andrew and raise her daughter on her own. Alyssa dropped out of college because of her pregnancy. On December 31, 2019, her 24th birthday, Alyssa gave birth to a healthy baby girl and named her Willow. Despite the challenges ahead, Alyssa is still trying her best to be a good mother. Alyssa often shares family photos on social media platforms. People close to Alyssa describe her as outspoken, energetic, kind, and has a bright smile. Alyssa has worked hard to earn money to take care of her daughter. She is working at Green Tree, a residential real estate company. With the support of her family, especially her grandparents, Alyssa tried to give her daughter a peaceful childhood while staying away from Andrew because she considered him unreliable. However, Andrew refused to give up. He initiated a fierce legal battle to gain custody of Willow, asserting that Andrew would achieve his goals at all costs and nothing could stop him. In April 2020, just 4 months after Willow was born, a woman named Holly Elkins, 22, appeared in Andrew's life. Holly Elkins quickly moved in with Andrew and began planning their life together. Holly Elkins saw Alyssa as a rival and sought to eliminate her from Andrew's life. Alyssa considered herself the best mother for Willow. She began to feel the growing threat from Andrew and his fiancée Holly Elkins. Friends advised Alyssa to be cautious and prepare for the worst. Little did Alyssa know that her life was about to be seriously threatened. As soon as Andrew Bird and Holly Elkins began dating, they immediately launched a plan to bring Alyssa down. Their goal was to ruin Alyssa's reputation and take away Alyssa's custody of their child in order to gain custody of Willow. In text messages, Holly Elkins openly expressed her desire to eliminate Alyssa. Holly Elkins wrote to Andrew that Alyssa was controlling him, making him prioritize Alyssa, and demanding that Andrew show subservience to Alyssa. Holly Elkins viciously criticized Alyssa, calling her a liar, stupid, and a bad mother. Holly Elkins encouraged Andrew to take action against Alyssa, claiming that Alyssa was hindering their family happiness with Willow. Holly Elkins and Andrew installed a GPS tracking device on Alyssa's car to monitor her every move. Holly Elkins then anonymously called 911, falsely reporting that Alyssa was driving erratically in order to discredit her with the police. On another occasion, Holly Elkins went to the police station and falsely accused Alyssa of attacking her. To prove this story, Holly Elkins scratched her chest. The couple also hired a private investigator to find evidence against Alyssa and her new boyfriend. However, the detective did not find any evidence that could incriminate Alyssa, but Holly Elkins and Andrew did not give up. In September 2020, Holly Elkins and Andrew hid drugs and unregistered weapons in Alyssa's car and anonymously reported that Alyssa was trafficking drugs from her car. During the interrogation, Alyssa cried and insisted that she had nothing to do with drugs, and immediately suspected Andrew of having a role in the plot, with the aim of discrediting Alyssa in the eyes of the police. Unfortunately, she could not prove it. Holly Elkins and Andrew planned every detail of the crime. On September 10, 2020, Holly Elkins went to a sports store with Andrew. There, Andrew bought a black raincoat with cash, and Holly Elkins helped Andrew choose the right outfit for the crime plan. On September 14th, Holly Elkins went to a pharmacy and bought dark foundation and other cosmetics to disguise Andrew. On September 19th, Holly Elkins and Andrew stopped by a hardware store where they bought shotgun shells and a large Camillus knife. Both the gun and knife would be used by Andrew to take revenge on his daughter's mother, Alyssa. During the last week of September, Holly Elkins texted Andrew frequently, urging him to carry out the plan. Holly Elkins stressed that they needed to resolve the issue. Holly Elkins knew that their relationship would be in danger if Andrew did not act. Upon receiving the text messages, Andrew put his plan into action. The search history on Andrew's phone showed that he had begun researching how to remove gunpowder residue from his hands after shooting, indicating that Andrew did not want to leave any traces. 6 days before the attack, Alyssa and Andrew purchased a used black Ford Expedition. Andrew told the seller that he would use the car to supervise a school project. On the morning of October 2nd, Andrew disguised himself as another man. Andrew wore a black raincoat and parked his Ford Expedition SUV near Alyssa's home. Through text messages provided by Holly Elkin, Andrew learned Alyssa's daily routine and determined where Andrew could find Alyssa. On the morning of October 2nd, 2020, Alyssa dropped off her 1-year-old daughter, Willow, at her grandmother's house while she was on her way to work at Green Tree Home Management in Carrollton, as she did every day. Alyssa parked her car in front of the office around 9 a.m. and was about to enter the house when a black SUV sped toward her car. Andrew, dressed in a black hoodie, wearing a mask and holding a handgun, attacked Alyssa. She had no chance to react before he approached her and shot her in the head through the window. Alyssa dropped to the steering wheel, her face and hair covered in blood. Despite her serious injuries, Alyssa still had enough strength to open the car door and tried to crawl toward the office door. Alyssa was trying to call for help, but her body was weak and covered in blood. Despite the critical situation, Alyssa showed incredible willpower in her final moments. Andrew quickly returned when he saw movement. He pulled a large hunting knife from his coat and attacked Alyssa, who was on the ground. Andrew grabbed Alyssa's hair and brutally stabbed her multiple times in the neck, chest, and abdomen, totaling at least 13 wounds. Alyssa died on the spot from these severe injuries. When Alyssa's coworkers ran out to the parking lot after hearing her screams, they found Alyssa lying in a pool of blood with her throat slit. They attempted to revive Alyssa using CPR but were unsuccessful. By this time, Andrew had escaped in his black SUV, leaving the bloody weapon at the scene. Witnesses described the attacker as a tall, muscular man dressed all in black with a mask or hood. Many people mistook him for an African American at the time of the attack. According to Holly Elkins, she was at home with Andrew's daughter, Willow, giving her an alibi. Holly Elkins later told police that Andrew was believed to be with her the entire time. The brutal murder, which happened so brazenly in a public place, shocked the people of Carrollton. They were puzzled about the motive for this dangerous crime. However, Alyssa's loved ones and friends immediately suspected Andrew Bird. They knew about the ongoing dispute between Alyssa and Andrew over the custody of their child. Alyssa's mother, holding back tears, reported her suspicions about Andrew to the police. She shared with the police about Andrew's threats and harassment of Alyssa, as well as the long legal battle for custody of her granddaughter. According to her, Andrew had repeatedly stated that Alyssa would not be allowed to raise their daughter Willow. The investigation into Alyssa Burkett's murder was launched. At first, Alyssa's colleagues provided details about the attacker's appearance. This man, despite wearing a mask, was tall, muscular, appeared to be muscular, and some even thought he was African American. The testimony of Alyssa's loved ones made her ex-boyfriend, Andrew Bird, the main subject of the investigation. Alyssa's new boyfriend also said that Andrew had given them detailed addresses, even though no one had told Andrew. Based on this information, police began tracking Andrew's location in Rowlett. Not long after, they saw Andrew, along with his daughter Willow, packing up to leave for an extended period of time. When Andrew got into the car, the police stopped and searched the unmarked car. During the search, they found men's boots cut into pieces and soaked in drugs. Police discovered items related to camouflage makeup, napkins with makeup on them. When police searched Andrew's home, they found a lot of evidence. They discovered the pin for a GPS tracking device that Andrew had attached to Alyssa and her new boyfriend's car. Police also found an automatic silencer for a handgun and a cache of weapons. And police also found the phone that Andrew used when he called the police to report the discovery of drugs in Alyssa's car. Police confiscated 3 of Andrew's phones. When police checked the search history of one of those cell phones, they found questions about how to disassemble a gun barrel on his hand. This suggests that Andrew was trying to cover his tracks. Police found an abandoned black Ford Expedition SUV on the outskirts of town. When they examined the cabin, forensic experts found Alyssa's blood and fake beard hairs with Andrew's DNA. The dealer confirmed that Andrew had bought the car and paid in cash. Forensic tests showed that Alyssa's fatal bullet was fired from a .45 caliber handgun found in the car. Andrew's fingerprints were also found on the handle of the hunting knife. Additionally, Andrew's handwriting appeared on GPS devices and in calls to police. It appears that the prosecution has assembled evidence of Andrew Bird's guilt. However, the complaint also seeks to hold his co-defendant, Holly Elkins, accountable. Email exchanges between Andrew and Holly Elkins revealed Holly Elkins' role in planning and inciting the crime. The investigation spanned several months, during which time the prosecution assembled strong evidence tying Andrew and Holly Elkins to the brutal death of Alyssa Burkett. In June 2022, the Alyssa Burkett murder trial began, nearly 2 years after the tragedy. The 2 defendants, 35-year-old Andrew Bird and 23-year-old Holly Elkins, were charged with stalking, conspiracy, and first-degree murder. A key witness was Christopher Mayo, Alyssa's new boyfriend at the time of her death. Christopher Mayo told the jury what had happened over the course of several months, including the arguments and troubles they had endured. Christopher Mayo recalled numerous occasions when Alyssa expressed to him her fear that Andrew would harm her. Christopher Mayo witnessed Andrew's frequent threats over the phone, along with lies that damaged Alyssa's reputation with social services and the police. In addition, Christopher Mayo believed that the person directly directing all of the above actions was Holly Elkins. Alyssa's co-workers and friends shared her grief. Before her death, Alyssa shared with her co-workers and friends her fear of Andrew and the feeling of being constantly watched. Alyssa even told a friend that if anything happened to her, Andrew would be the one to do it. Forensic experts presented the jury with a large amount of physical evidence linking Andrew Bird to the crime scene. The evidence included Andrew's DNA and fingerprints on the murder weapon, as well as gunpowder residue and camouflage in his home and car. And evidence of email exchanges between Andrew and Holly Elkins, indicating they had planned the crime together. Andrew's defense argued that his actions were unintentional and not premeditated. The defense also stressed that Andrew was under a lot of pressure and stress from the protracted legal battle, which had affected Andrew's emotions. However, evidence from the correspondence and the careful planning of the act refutes these theories. Meanwhile, Holly Elkins denied any involvement, offering a plea, but her testimony was also full of lies. Holly Elkins' text messages incited Andrew to take action against her rival Alyssa. In May 2023, the judge handed down the verdict. Andrew Bird was sentenced to 43 years in prison. Holly Elkins was sentenced to 20 years in prison for being an accessory to a crime. The courtroom erupted in applause as justice was finally served. Alyssa Burkett's killers got what they deserved. Alyssa family, in pain and tears, expressed deep gratitude to the journalists and the jury. Although the killer faces a harsh sentence, Alyssa Burkett's family cannot make up for their terrible loss. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Ellen Greenberg. Ellen Greenberg was born in June 1993 in New York to Santa and George Greenberg. She is an only child and grew up in a loving environment. During her high school years, she was very active in sports. Ellen was very sociable and also did well in her studies. After finishing high school, she attended Pennsylvania State University. However, when she started working in her field, Ellen realized that it was not her true passion. While working, Ellen also enrolled in a correspondence course at a teacher training academy. A few years later, she successfully completed her degree and moved to Philadelphia, where she became a junior high school teacher at a local school. Ellen's life was going well. She truly enjoyed working with her students. During this time, Ellen began a relationship with a young man named Samuel, also known as Sam Goldberg. He came from a wealthy and prominent family. Samuel's parents owned a large business and his uncle was known as one of the best lawyers in the state. Ellen and Samuel met at a party in 2009 through friends and quickly developed feelings for each other. Their relationship quickly developed and they later decided to live together. In 2011, Samuel proposed to Ellen with a diamond ring. The happy couple began planning their wedding, scheduled for the spring of that year. In January 2011, Ellen went to work at school as usual, but around noon, a strong wind and snowstorm caused classes to be canceled and both students and teachers were sent home. Ellen returned to her apartment, and then suddenly, Samuel also returned home. At 5 p.m., Samuel decided to go to the gym in their apartment complex. Samuel was gone for less than an hour, but when he returned, he found the apartment door locked from the inside and could not be entered. Samuel knocked loudly on the door and called Ellen's name. He then tried calling and texting Ellen, but there was no response. Samuel went down to the first floor to ask the security guard for help. Samuel explained the situation and asked the guard to open the door first. But the guard said that it was against his rules because he could not leave his post. Samuel then returned to his floor. He banged his shoulder on the door and on his first try, he broke the latch. It was very quiet inside. When he entered the kitchen, he saw a horrifying scene of Ellen lying on the floor, leaning against the cupboard door, her body stabbed multiple times and her clothes soaked in blood. Samuel quickly called an ambulance. When asked to check Ellen's pulse, Samuel hesitated and kept wondering if he really needed to do so. After a moment of silence, Samuel suddenly said that there was a knife protruding from Ellen's chest. Police arriving at the scene were surprised to find the door locked from the inside with a bolt, which Samuel had pushed open with his shoulder. There was no sign of forced entry or any intruder in the room. Nothing had been stolen from the apartment. During Ellen's autopsy, there were no signs of struggle or any attempt to defend herself, suggesting that the incident occurred suddenly and the victim had no time to react. Ellen's autopsy found about 20 stab wounds of varying depth, the fatal stab wound to her heart. Ellen struggled with anxiety and panic attacks. The situation became so severe that she sought the help of a psychologist. The initial assumption of the police, before the autopsy, was that Ellen had committed suicide. Ellen's therapist prescribed 2 anti-anxiety medications, which she took regularly. The psychologist confirmed that the medications would not affect Ellen's mental state or lead to thoughts of death. Despite her anxiety, Ellen never voiced such thoughts. Additionally, Ellen's friends and colleagues noticed that after she and Samuel began living together, her behavior began to change. Along with becoming anxious and restless, Ellen's parents also noticed similar strange behavior. 3 weeks before the tragedy, Ellen told her mother that she wanted to quit school, give up everything, and move back in with her parents. Her mother was surprised by this and assured Ellen that she could come home at any time. After the couple moved in together, Samuel began to act violently toward Ellen, leaving her fearful and reluctant to speak up. Ellen's psychologist noted that Ellen had difficulty expressing her feelings and experiences. It seemed as though she wanted to reveal something important, but fear held her back. The lack of care in the examination of the crime scene and body, as well as the subsequent investigation, was astonishing. Many important details, events, and evidence were overlooked or lost, making it impossible to reconstruct the full details of the incident. Initially, there were no defensive wounds on Ellen's hands. Many bruises were found on her body, and the degree of healing suggested that they had occurred several weeks ago. Samuel claimed that these injuries could have been caused by playing sports. However, Ellen's parents said that their daughter had not been to the gym or the playground for quite some time. Soon after the investigation began, the possibility of suicide was raised. Ellen had approximately 20 penetrating wounds of varying depths, and forensic analysis showed that 10 of these wounds were from the back. If Ellen had been attacked from behind and suffered serious injuries, even if they did not kill Ellen immediately, they would have likely limited her ability to move and resist. It is highly unlikely that someone would inflict such wounds on themselves and then stab themselves deep into the heart, leading medical experts to question the cause of death. The investigation still did not result in criminal charges. As there was no trace of a stranger in the apartment, nor any sign of self-defense. Although the victim's wife or partner is often the prime suspect in these cases, Samuel was never a suspect. No charges were ever brought against Samuel, and he was only questioned at the police station on the day of the incident, along with his uncle, a prominent lawyer. The events of that day were reconstructed entirely from Samuel's account, which was sometimes unclear. But he attributed his confusion to stress. Neighbors reported only that they heard knocking and screaming from Samuel when he could not get into the apartment and was trying to call Ellen. Samuel claimed that he asked a security guard for help, that the security guard accompanied him down the stairs, and that the security guard witnessed Samuel kicking down a door. However, the security guard denied this claim, claiming that he never left his post. Regardless, the police did not look into the matter further, considering it irrelevant. Only a surveillance camera leading to the gym was examined, which showed Samuel walking toward the gym and then returning. Samuel may have escaped by another route and then returned to the gym the same way. However, his alibi was not investigated, and witnesses who confirmed that Samuel was working out were not sought. The police officer who responded to the call noticed that Samuel was acting unusually, even though he was screaming and crying loudly. The expert suspected that he was faking his panic and anxiety. Importantly, before calling the police, Samuel contacted his parents and his uncle, a lawyer. His uncle arrived at the apartment before the police arrived to give a statement. Samuel went to the police station with his uncle. Furthermore, the next day, Samuel returned to the sealed apartment with his uncle to retrieve some personal belongings. Samuel took 2 laptops, a phone, and a tablet from Ellen. A few days later, the police decided to examine the devices and discovered that their search history included topics related to suicide. When the police arrived at the scene, they conducted only a preliminary examination and concluded that Ellen had committed suicide. Despite new information that later emerged, the police refused to change their verdict. The sequence of the injuries remains unclear, but it has been confirmed that the final wound was to the heart. The medical examiner found this odd and decided to investigate further. They sent a sample of Ellen's spine to a specialist who could assess the condition of the spinal cord. If the spinal cord was damaged, it would indicate that Ellen was paralyzed and could not have stabbed herself in the heart. Soon after, the police suddenly changed their minds and stopped the investigation, stating that, according to the report, there was no spinal cord injury. However, this conclusion was not added to the case file. It was also not noted that although there were many serious injuries on Ellen's body, there was very little blood, suggesting that someone might have wiped it away. No one actively looked for any signs of blood that had been wiped away. Additionally, the apartment's trash bins had not been checked, meaning any potential evidence inside was lost forever. Samuel's family, who were the first to arrive on the scene, notified Ellen's parents of their daughter's death. Ellen's family, who lived several hundred miles away, quickly arrived on the scene. Ellen's parents received no clear explanation of what happened that night involving Ellen. They were given only vague conclusions and were told that no criminal investigation would be initiated. Ellen's parents then chose to conduct an investigation, bringing in independent experts. Shortly thereafter, a private investigator contacted them and offered to assist them for free, as he wanted to shed light on this puzzling case. The detective examined the evidence and concluded that Ellen's body had been moved after her death. He also discovered smears on the floor that looked like drag marks. Additionally, when reviewing the case, the security guard recalled that Samuel, who had asked for help, was wearing a tracksuit and said he had just come from the gym, when in fact he was wearing boots. Despite this new evidence and witness testimony, Ellen's parents were once again denied a criminal case and no further investigation was conducted. Ellen's parents were not allowed access to important case files. 4 years later, a young police officer joined the unit as an assistant prosecutor. After learning about this unusual unsolved case while in college, he decided to look into the archives to uncover the truth. His attention was drawn to the wound at the back of the head, which might have been the first sign that Ellen had been attacked from behind when she was not expecting it. He was concerned to note that there was no spinal cord injury, but there was no official document to prove it. He assumed it was lost somewhere in the archives. He later formally requested a copy of the document from the forensic center, and it turned out that no one had ever come to such a conclusion and the body had not been examined for spinal cord injury. A fragment of the spine was surprisingly preserved and could be re-examined. An independent specialist assessed it and found that the spinal cord had sustained damage in multiple areas, indicating that Ellen could not have caused any additional injuries to herself. The findings were submitted to the police, but after reviewing them again, they decided not to pursue criminal charges. In 2018, the medical examiner concluded that Ellen had inflicted all 20 of her injuries on herself. The investigation reached a dead end. In their grief, the parents hired a new lawyer and together they gathered all the previously undocumented documents, evidence, facts, and witness statements. In 2019, they filed a new lawsuit against the medical examiner and the police. The following spring, the case was accepted and settled, but the trial never took place due to the global pandemic. Due to negligence by the police and medical examiners, important evidence was lost forever. Ellen's parents created a social media page to track the progress of the investigation, sharing official documents, new information, and updates. Ellen's family, friends, and colleagues are convinced that she could not have killed herself, especially not in such a brutal way. In the summer of 2022, the case was dismissed again, and Ellen's parents successfully appealed to the district attorney's office, where a new prosecutor took over. The investigation was restarted 11 years after the tragic events, but to this day it remains unsolved. During the first year after the tragedy, Samuel tried to keep in touch with Ellen's family. However, he did not participate in their investigation and refused to communicate with the police. He seemed to have no interest in the case, as Samuel accepted Ellen's death as a suicide. Samuel got married a year later. He and his wife moved to another state and cut ties with Ellen's family. They are now raising 2 children together. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Neil Entwistle. Neil Entwistle was born on September 18, 1978, in Worksop, Nottinghamshire, England, to Clifford and Yvonne Entwistle. He grew up in a humble home with his younger brother, Russell. His father worked as a coal miner before becoming a labor counselor, while his mother worked as a cook in a school cafeteria. After finishing high school, Neil Entwistle enrolled in the University of York, where he studied electronic engineering and business management. During this time, Entwistle met an American student named Rachel Souza who was attending York as a study abroad student. Rachel was originally from the Kingston area in Massachusetts, had attended Silver Lake Region High School before going to Holy Cross College in Worcester. While studying abroad in York for a year, she met Neil Entwistle on the rowing team. Neil Entwistle was withdrawn, shy, and indecisive, rarely interacting with others. Rachel, on the other hand, exuded confidence, was cheerful, outgoing, and well-liked. Her American roots brought an undeniable charm to her personality, and Rachel was well received by the other members of the rowing team. Over time, Neil Entwistle and Rachel found themselves drawn to each other, eventually spending more and more time together. Benjamin Pryor, a close friend of Neil Entwistle and Rachel's since college, said the couple were very understanding, affectionate and caring towards each other. While Neil Entwistle worked at a defense and security technology company based in Malvern, Worcestershire, Rachel pursued a career in education after completing her studies in 2002. Rachel took up a teaching role in English, drama and theater studies at St. Augustine's Catholic High School in Redditch, nurturing young minds through the arts. In a post on Friends Reunited in June 2003, Neil Entwistle happily shared about his upcoming marriage to Rachel. They met through rowing, although he expressed dissatisfaction with life south of the border in Birmingham. He was happy with his upcoming marriage. In August 2003, Neil Entwistle and Rachel got married in 2 ceremonies, one in Plymouth, UK, and the other in Massachusetts, USA. After the US ceremony, they had a reception in the UK in November of the same year. Neil Entwistle shared the early days of their married life on a family website, including their Christmas 2004 trip to the Mediterranean. In April 2005, their daughter, Lillian Rose, was born. Neil Entwistle and Rachel decided to move to the United States. They initially lived with Rachel's mother and stepfather in Carver, Massachusetts, until they purchased their own home in Hopkinton on January 12, 2006. Their new home was located on a quiet cul-de-sac with only 8 neighbors, creating a peaceful setting close to a major city. Despite Neil Entwistle's efforts to find work as a computer programmer and IT specialist, he encountered difficulties in finding work, leading to financial stress and mounting debt. To ease the financial burden, Neil Entwistle turned to selling PC parts on eBay. However, his business was affected by customer complaints about undelivered orders, forcing eBay to investigate fraud. An investigation into Neil Entwistle's eBay activities uncovered that he was using multiple accounts under different names. Further investigation revealed that Neil Entwistle was involved in running a website called millimaker.co.uk. This website promoted a get-rich-quick scheme that promised to help people in the adult entertainment industry make a guaranteed $6,000 per month within 6 months. The website also claimed to offer 24/7 assistance. However, these claims ultimately led to the website being shut down. Neil Entwistle used online platforms to find sexual partners. He visited several websites to pursue relationships looking for sexual partners. On Adult Friend Finder, Neil Entwistle created a profile and emailed several women expressing his interest in meeting sexual partners. An investigation found incriminating evidence on Neil Entwistle's laptop. In his profile, Neil Entwistle stated that he was interested in meeting American women of different ages. Neil Entwistle also mentioned that he wanted to confirm whether American women were better in bed than women from other countries. Neil Entwistle's profile indicated that he was looking for a specific type of casual relationship and was open to meeting people with similar interests. Testimony at the trial revealed Neil Entwistle had continued his interest in escort services up to January 18, 2006. Online searches he conducted on Google included Blonde Bay Escort Service, Sex Escort Services Westboro, and Escort in Worcester. In their defense, Neil Entwistle's lawyers claimed that his wife, Rachel, was dissatisfied with their sex life. However, when reviewing Neil Entwistle's internet search history, it is revealed that Neil Entwistle had much darker motives than seeking out prostitutes and seeking relationships with other women. During this time, Neil Entwistle visited his father-in-law, Joe Matarazzo, in Carver, Massachusetts. Joe Matarazzo, a member of the Old Colony Sporting Club, had previously taught Neil Entwistle how to shoot. Neil Entwistle also had a .22 caliber revolver with Joe Matarazzo's family. However, on this occasion, Neil Entwistle planned to steal a gun from Joe Matarazzo's family. Neil Entwistle went to his in-laws' home, found a hidden gun, and took it back to his house in Hopkinton. Once home, he secretly hid the firearm, waiting for the right moment to carry out a violent act against his family. On January 20, 2006, Neil Entwistle entered the master bedroom of his home, where his wife, Rachel, and their 9-month-old daughter, Lillian, were sleeping in their new bed. Neil Entwistle shot Rachel in the head, and then shot Lillian, who was lying next to her. The bullet passed through Lillian's body and also hit Rachel in the left chest. Later that day, Neil Entwistle returned to Carver with the uncleaned weapon. He would later claim that he had gone shopping at Staples on that Friday and discovered his family dead when he got home. After leaving Carver, Neil Entwistle drove to Boston's Logan Airport on the evening of January 20, 2006. At the airport, he made 2 successful ATM withdrawals totaling $800, but 3 additional attempts to withdraw $420 were declined. The next day, January 21, 2006, Neil Entwistle bought a one-way ticket to London without checking any luggage. He boarded a British Airways flight that departed Boston at 8:15 p.m. that evening. Unbeknownst to Neil Entwistle, several neighbors he had invited for dinner, including Joanna Gatley and her sister Maureen, arrived at his home around 7 p.m. to find it locked with the lights on inside. Concerned for Rachel's safety, neighbors attempted to contact her mother, but were unable to reach her. They then called 911 at around 8:30. Police arrived at Neil Entwistle's home to search for clues about the missing family. Upon entering, Sergeant Michael Sutton observed the bedroom, noticing a large unmade bed, but nothing unusual. After completing their search, the police locked the house and left. However, Joanna Gatley and Maureen were still worried and decided to spend the night in the car outside the house, hoping that Rachel's family would return. To cope with the cold weather, they made several trips to the gas station restroom. The following Sunday morning, Joanna Gatley and Maureen gained entry to the house using the garage door code they had obtained from a next-door neighbor the night before. Inside, Joanna Gatley and Maureen discovered dishes and leftover food in the kitchen, indicating that the family had just finished eating. The bathtub was still full of water, indicating that the couple had bathed their infant daughter. They proceeded to the master bedroom, then to Lillian's bathroom, where classical music was playing, and finally checked the living room. Rachel's mother and stepfather then arrived at Rachel's house, and together they searched around the house. After assessing the situation, they decided to report the family missing to the Hopkinton Police Department. The police arrived at Rachel's house. Sergeant Sutton entered the basement and detected a foul odor. He followed the stench into the house to the master bedroom, where he found the bodies of Rachel and her infant child, Lillian. The mother's body was lying on a bed, covered in clothes. Rachel had her arms spread across Lillian's chest, both of them wearing pajamas. Autopsy results showed that Rachel died from a gunshot wound to the head, while Lillian was shot in the torso. DNA evidence was also found on the barrel of the gun and on the butt of the gun, belonging to Neil Entwistle. About 36 hours after returning to England, Neil Entwistle visited his parents, Cliff and Yvonne. He told them that he had been driving around and had spent the previous night in a hotel. During this visit, Neil Entwistle revealed to his parents that he had discovered the bodies of his wife and daughter. On January 23, 2006, Neil Entwistle had a 2-hour telephone conversation with Hopkinton Police, which was recorded. On January 26, 2006, U.S. law enforcement officials traveled to the UK to interview Neil Entwistle. The next day, after consulting with a lawyer at the U.S. Embassy in London, Neil Entwistle chose not to cooperate with the American detectives. Meanwhile, Rachel and her daughter Lillian were buried in Evergreen Cemetery in Kingston, Massachusetts, under the surname Souza, sharing a single grave. With around 500 people attending the funeral to pay their respects. However, Neil Entwistle was absent from the ceremony, and Neil Entwistle's name was not mentioned in the proceedings or inscribed on the headstone. Despite this, Neil Entwistle sent a bouquet of flowers, consisting of an orange rose and a white lily, with a note that read, "My orange roses and lilies forever, signed Sakoko." After returning to the UK, Neil Entwistle resumed his normal life in February 2006. However, the media continued to gather outside his parents' home in Worksop. Neil Entwistle went to Notting Hill for dinner with his old crew from York University, followed by a trip to the cinema. Just a week after the funeral, on February 8, 2006, the Middlesex County District Attorney's Office issued an arrest warrant for Neil Entwistle. The following day, February 9, 2006, Neil Entwistle was arrested by police at Royal Oak Station as he was about to board a train. Neil Entwistle was returned to the United States on February 15 and appeared in court, where he was denied bail and held at the Middlesex County Jail in Cambridge, Massachusetts. On March 28, 2006, Neil Entwistle was formally charged with murder and illegal possession of a firearm and ammunition. Neil Entwistle pleaded not guilty despite the charges against him. Almost a year after the incident, in December 2006, authorities at Middlesex County Jail found letters Neil Entwistle had written to his parents and lawyers. These letters showed that Neil Entwistle was depressed and might be thinking about killing himself. As a result, he was moved to Bridgewater Hospital for a psychiatric evaluation before being sent back to Middlesex County. Forensic psychiatrist Christopher Cordes believed that Neil Entwistle's behavior was caused by Asperger's syndrome, a view that was shared by Dr. David Holmes. After several delays, the process of choosing jurors for Neil Entwistle's trial at Middlesex Superior Court began in June 2008. The trial for the double murder of Neil Entwistle's wife and daughter began on June 2, 2008, in Massachusetts. Elliot Weinstein led the defense team for Neil Entwistle. During the trial, Elliot attempted to object to the prosecution's plan to introduce DNA evidence, but was unsuccessful. Elliot also attempted to suppress other evidence found in the family home, arguing that it was taken without a warrant, but this effort was also unsuccessful. Neil Entwistle chose not to call any witnesses or testify during the trial. Notably, Neil Entwistle showed little emotion throughout the proceedings. On June 25, 2008, the jury delivered a guilty verdict, convicting Neil Entwistle of 2 counts of first-degree murder, as well as unlawful possession of a firearm and ammunition. As a result, Neil Entwistle was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Despite the severe sentence, Neil Entwistle appeared calm as he left the courtroom. Neil Entwistle was incarcerated at the Souza Baranowski Correctional Center. In August 2008, he became the victim of a hoax when he shaved his head to seek protection from a white supremacist prison gang. However, instead of receiving protection, the gang threatened Neil Entwistle's life. After this incident, Neil Entwistle was placed in protective custody. He was then transferred to the Old Colony Correctional Center, a prison located in Bridgewater, Massachusetts, in December. The tragic death of Rachel and her infant daughter has left a lasting legacy of grief for the family and those who loved them. In the face of this tragic loss, the community has come together to support and comfort the grieving family. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Grace Mill Lane. Grace Emmy Rose Mill Lane was born on December 2, 1996 in Wickford, Essex, to her parents Gillian and David Mill Lane. She was the youngest of her 3 siblings. She was known as a lovely, outgoing, cheerful daughter who thought about her family and loved creativity and art. Because her family was so close to her, Grace maintained daily contact with her siblings and parents, even when she rented a house near her school, Lincoln University, where she studied advertising and marketing. In 2018, Grace Mill Lane, 21, graduated with a bachelor's degree in advertising and marketing. Like most young people at that age, Grace decided that she would take a year off before settling into her career. She decided to travel to South America before going to New Zealand. She embarked on a 10-month solo adventure in October 2018. She initially visited Peru before making her way to South America. On November 19th, Grace arrived in New Zealand and checked into the base backpackers hostel in Auckland, ready for a 2-week holiday traveling around the Upper North Island. It was in New Zealand that Grace met her Tinder match, a 28-year-old man named Jesse Kempson, on December 1st. Jesse Kempson was born on December 28, 1991, in Lower Hutt, New Zealand, but he grew up in Wellington. His parents separated when he was young, and for a time, he was raised by his grandparents. He moved to Australia with his mother as a teenager, but in 2016 he returned to New Zealand and lived in a hostel in Wellington. Grace didn't know that Jesse had a darker side, a more cruel soul, in him. Jesse was known to be a very charming guy, and he used that to manipulate people. On one occasion, Jesse lied to his former landlord that he was a professional softball player, newly signed by the New Zealand national softball team, the Black Sox, and claimed that his contract money would come so he could pay the rent. That went on for 2 months. And the homeowner only learned the truth when Black Sox management announced that no one knew who Jesse was. Unfortunately, the homeowner later discovered that he had fled elsewhere without his knowledge. He also sometimes claimed to have a bachelor's degree in international law, came from a millionaire family looking to buy a top restaurant in Auckland, had connections to the New Zealand Immigration Service, and many other lies that he mentioned to everyone. In reality, Jesse was nothing more than a dreamer who could only impress people with wild lies. His former roommates in a Green Lane boarding house found Jesse disturbing and untrustworthy before he moved into the City Life apartment. On another occasion, a woman he lived with claimed he stole money from her house and ran away again, costing the City Life homeowner thousands of dollars. Jesse was an enigma to many. He lied throughout his life, and it seemed to work. He also seemed to get away with it time and time again. Back at the dorm where Grace was staying, she was chatting happily with Jesse. Grace had no doubts and was captivated by Jesse. Grace even sent a text message to her best friend Anna back home, telling Anna that she agreed to Jesse's confession. Since it was Saturday and her 22nd birthday was the next day, Grace didn't want to be alone and decided to go out. She decided it was time to meet Jesse. Jesse lived just 5 minutes away from where Grace lived, and Grace thought they needed to get to know each other a little better. On that special day, Grace got ready for her big evening and felt nothing but excitement and optimism. Grace left the base backpackers hostel in Auckland at 6 p.m. On the evening of December 1st, she wore a black dress and carried a small handbag. Little did she know that her night would take a devastating turn. Initially, the evening seemed to have gone well as she and Jesse visited the Blue Stone Room and left together around 9:30. However, When her 22nd birthday arrived the next day, Grace did not respond to birthday wishes from family and friends. This unusual silence caused anxiety and panic, especially among her family members. It was unusual for Grace not to keep in touch, as she regularly updated her family about her trip and shared photos of her adventures. Therefore, Grace's parents contacted Auckland police and reported her missing on December 5th. Thanks to an extensive network of CCTV cameras across the city and reports from witnesses, police were able to quickly track Grace's movements on the night she disappeared. They also identified the man with her, Jesse Kempson, who became a key figure in the investigation. Jesse stopped at the Blue Stone Room, a local bar next to the City Life Hotel where he was staying, on the night he was supposed to meet Grace. About half an hour before the scheduled meeting, Jesse was seen drinking 4 bottles of beer, sitting alone in a bar. Meanwhile, Grace arrived early at the Sky Tower, the location they had agreed upon. This location was chosen because of its high visibility and beauty. Sky Tower is a famous landmark in New Zealand's largest city and can be easily recognized from afar. When Jesse arrived, the two quickly recognized each other and greeted each other warmly, with Jesse hugging her as she smiled and approached him. They then went to a restaurant and burger bar on the first floor of the adjacent Sky City complex. Their entire time together at Sky City was captured on camera, showing Jesse and Grace chatting while riding the escalator to Andy's Burger and Bar. When they arrived, they ordered cocktails from the bartender and sat at the table to talk. They left the bar after an hour and a half and walked to a nearby Mexican restaurant. Over a period of time, they consumed a large number of drinks, including 2 pitchers of margaritas and a pitcher of sangria. They then moved to the Blue Stone Room, where Jesse had previously been drinking alone. At 8:40 p.m., Jesse gently kissed Grace. This marked the beginning of several shared kisses that took place over the next hour. During this time, there were brief interruptions, once when Jesse walked away for a moment. And another time when Grace checked her phone, as well as when she sent her last text to her friend, Anna. Jesse eventually walked away, took out his phone, and left a message on Grace's Facebook profile, saying she looked beautiful and radiant. Unbeknownst to him, this seemingly harmless act eventually turned the detectives towards him. Around 9:30 p.m., Jesse and Grace left the venue, walked toward the City Life Hotel lobby, and took the elevator to room 308. What happened while Jesse and Grace were in the hotel room is unknown. What is confirmed is that Jesse killed her. At 1:30 a.m., Grace's body was brought into room 308. Following the discovery, police determined that Grace had never left the building and that Jesse had chosen not to seek emergency assistance following the death of Grace. After Grace's death, Jesse conducted numerous internet searches using his cell phone. His online searches included searching for the terms hottest fire and Waitakere Range. Waitakere was the area where Jesse later tried to bury Grace's body in a shallow grave. Jesse also browsed a website to find video content. In addition to these actions, Jesse also took 7 intimate and explicit photos of Grace's body after her death. These photos included close-ups and posed shots that he arranged to take. The next morning, while Grace's body was still in room 308, Jesse sent a message to a woman he met on Tinder to go on a date the same day. Jesse's actions continued and he was recorded on CCTV as he went to an entertainment store to buy a suitcase and a supermarket to buy cleaning supplies. After these purchases, he rented a red Toyota hatchback and went out in the afternoon to meet the woman from Tinder at a bar in Ponsonby called RRY, while Grace's body remained in his room. On December 2nd, Jesse returned to his hotel room around 5:45 p.m. and rented a carpet cleaning machine, saying he needed it to remove a red wine stain. Then, he parked the rental car outside the hotel, took the luggage cart from the front desk, and went upstairs. He returned with the cart. which then contained 2 large suitcases. He loaded his luggage into the car and moved it to a nearby parking lot. Unbeknownst to the others, one of the suitcases, a silver one, contained Grace's body, while the other suitcase was used as bait to avoid arousing suspicion. Throughout the day, security cameras recorded Jesse changing clothes multiple times. Early the next morning, around 6:15 a.m., Jesse was seen leaving the hotel and driving away, stopping briefly to buy a shovel at a store outside of town. On December 7, 2018, Grace's father, David Mill Lane, traveled to New Zealand to make a sincere appeal for information about his daughter's disappearance. A detective identified Jesse as a person of interest after Grace's mother noticed he had sent her a Facebook message at 9:29 p.m. on December 1st, just 11 minutes before Jesse and Grace left Blue Stone Room and went to his room. During Detective Diana Levinson's initial questioning, Jesse claimed that he met Grace but broke up with her at 10 p.m. on Saturday, and that was the last time he saw her. However, detectives obtained CCTV footage from the hotel, which proved Jesse was lying. At the second interview, Jesse was forced to admit to killing Grace, but he claimed it was a sexual accident after she asked him to strangle her in an attempt to make the experience more pleasurable. After the interview, he was arrested and led police to the location of Grace's body. The body was discovered about 4 p.m. on December 9th in Waitakere Ranges Regional Park, off Scenic Drive. An autopsy was conducted on December 10th. An autopsy showed Grace had been strangled and bruises on her body showed she had been restrained. Jesse's trial began in Auckland on November 4, 2019. Jesse claimed Grace's death was an accident caused by rough sex gone wrong, but the jury rejected this explanation and found him guilty. Jesse Kempson had been convicted of murder on November 22, 2019, at the age of 28. During his trial, it had become clear that he had a history of making women feel extremely uncomfortable, especially those he had met or communicated with on Tinder. 8 months before meeting his victim, Jesse had dated another British tourist on Tinder and had taken her back to his motel room in Oakland. When she had refused to have sex with him, he had assaulted her while she had been crying and frozen in bed with fear. The female tourist had kept the incident a secret until she had recognized Jesse in the media after he had been charged with murder. Jesse's online interactions with another woman had also raised concerns. He had shared explicit messages where he had detailed his sexual preferences and had explained why he had them. It was believed that his desire to control and dominate might have contributed to Grace's death. In a separate trial, Jesse had been convicted of assaulting his ex-girlfriend. He had assaulted her, had threatened her with a butcher knife, and had forced her to perform humiliating acts. Jesse had claimed that he had been sent by the CIA to kill her, displaying a disturbing pattern of behavior. Throughout the trial, Jesse had shown no remorse for his actions and had refused to accept responsibility. On February 21, 2020, Jesse had received a sentence of life in prison with a minimum of 17 years without parole. The tragic events surrounding Grace's story had highlighted the need for increased safety measures for travelers, especially young women hoping to explore the world. Hey detectives, welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Rowena Irani. Rowena Irani was born on February 18, 1994, in Karachi, Pakistan, to parents Tarun and Bam Irani. In 2004, when Rowena was 10 years old, her family moved to Wichita, Kansas, in search of better opportunities. The goal was to provide Rowena and her older brother, Rashid, with a brighter future in America. However, the 9.11 tragedy 3 years earlier had created a climate of prejudice that affected the Irani family, making it difficult for Rowena and Rashid to form friendships due to the hostility they faced. Despite the initial difficulties, Rowena and Rashid eventually settled in and expanded their social circle. Rowena joined her high school's ROTC program and drill team, which helped her develop skills, even though she didn't plan to pursue a military career. After a tough start, Rowena blossomed into a strong-willed, friendly, and caring individual. Rowena graduated from Wichita Heights High School in 2012 and enrolled at Wichita State University, choosing to live at home while pursuing a degree in psychology. Her goal was to earn a master's degree and become a counselor for teenagers. Rowena's mother was extremely proud of her dedication to her studies. From the start, the Irani family's sacrifices clearly had a positive impact on their children. Rowena, in particular, wanted to help others reach their full potential. She started working at the Wichita Children's Home, a place for neglected, abused, and emotionally distressed youth. Rowena formed strong bonds with the children, showing her remarkable ability to understand and support them. Rowena made the children feel welcome and cherished, creating a sense of security. Every morning, Rowena would gently wake the children, and every evening, she would bid them farewell. The children looked forward to sharing their daily experiences with her, no matter how small. Rowena also helped the children set goals and find ways to achieve them, showing her dedication to their well-being. Rowena demonstrated a strong commitment to helping troubled youth, and her outstanding academic record as a psychology major indicated she had found her purpose in supporting others. She seemed to be living the American dream her parents had sought. However, problems in her personal life soon arose, ultimately leading to a tragic outcome. In May 2016, Rowena reconnected with Dane Owens, a family friend, at her brother's wedding. Dane came from a wealthy Kansas family and had joined the U.S. Army after high school. His military service ended abruptly due to a severe traumatic brain injury from an explosion. After a medical discharge, Dane attended Kansas State University, where he met Rowena. They soon developed strong feelings for each other. But problems soon arose due to Dane's behavior. He was possessive, controlling, and had a quick temper. People close to Rowena said that Dane became obsessed with the idea of marrying her and starting a family right away, even though she wasn't sure about it. At 22, Rowena wanted to finish college before making such a big decision. Dane's insistence on marriage and his intense behavior scared Rowena, her feel like the relationship was moving too fast. When she asked for space, Dane wrote a disturbing letter, begging her not to leave him and hinting that he might harm himself if she did. This led Rowena to end the relationship. At first, it seemed like Dane accepted Rowena's decision when she reiterated that she wasn't ready for marriage or starting a family. However, just 1 week after giving her space, Dane started pressuring her again about getting engaged, planning a wedding, and having kids. His actions made it clear that he saw Rowena as a prize to be won. Instead of supporting her education and career, Dane seemed determined to limit Rowena to a domestic role. Rowena is worried about her relationship with Dane because she feels he is too controlling of her, and this makes her wonder if they are really a good couple. By September 2016, Dane's increasing aggression had become alarming, prompting Rowena to confide in her brother, Rashid, a police officer. She shared several disturbing incidents, including Dane's claims of committing brutal killings during his military service. He even bragged about murdering women and children while deployed in Afghanistan. Rowena found these revelations deeply disturbing. Furthermore, Dane had expressed his intention to kill an ex-girlfriend who had ended their relationship. He confessed that following the breakup, he became consumed by a desire for revenge and struggled with emotional instability, to the point where he even contemplated committing murder. Rashid agreed with Rowena's assessment that Dane posed a genuine threat and he seemed capable of violent acts against her. On September 23, Rowena ended her relationship with Dane. She blocked his phone number and social media profiles to distance herself. However, Dane refused to accept the breakup and started planning his revenge. Despite recovering from shoulder surgery and being unable to handle a firearm properly, Dane bought a .45 caliber handgun. On October 3rd, over a week after the breakup, he secretly visited Rowena's residence while her family was away. Surveillance cameras caught him parking his vehicle away from the house and approaching stealthily, hiding the firearm in a sling due to his injured arm. Dane entered the house through an unlocked door and waited for Rowena. When Rowena appeared, he aimed his gun and fatally shot her in the head. This was a deliberate and carefully planned violent act committed by someone who was excessively controlling. After shooting Rowena, Dane quickly left the house through the back door and drove away to avoid being caught. During his escape, he stopped to get rid of important evidence, including the handgun magazine and Rowena's phone, in various ponds in Wichita. Meanwhile, Rowena was left alone in her home, severely injured and bleeding heavily, for several hours. At around 4 p.m., her mother, Tarun, returned home after being dropped off from work. Tarun was worried because Rowena usually picked her up. But she couldn't reach Rowena by phone. She got a ride from a coworker and went home, where she found Rowena lying motionless on the floor, surrounded by a large amount of blood, with severe head injuries. Tarun immediately called for emergency services, but it was too late to save Rowena. Rowena's condition was extremely serious due to a gunshot wound and significant blood loss. She fought for her life at Wesley Medical Center for nearly 24 hours, while her family stayed by her side, hoping for a miracle. Tragically, she passed away on October 4th at just 22 years old. Her promising life was tragically ended by a violent act. Despite their intense grief, Rowena's family was determined to find justice for her murder. Rashid quickly focused the investigation on Dane, Rowena's ex-boyfriend, who had been causing her a great deal of fear before her death. Dane was soon found and brought in for questioning. After being arrested and taken to the police station, he admitted to holding a grudge against Rowena for breaking up with him. When questioned further, Dane tried to claim that Rowena's death was an accident, but the evidence proved this was not true. Dane told investigators that he had shown up at Rowena's home unannounced, carrying a loaded .45 caliber pistol and hoping to talk about getting back together. However, Dane claimed that the firearm was hidden in his arm sling and he never intended to threaten or harm Rowena when he entered the house looking for her. He said when Rowena suddenly appeared, he was startled, causing a moment of panic due to post-traumatic stress disorder from time in the military. Dean alleged that he accidentally fired a shot in her direction. He explained to detectives that he was left shocked and horrified after the bullet accidentally struck Rowena in the head, resulting in her immediate collapse to the ground. Panicked, he fled the scene and later got rid of the evidence. Despite his claim that the shooting was an accident caused by a reflex, detectives did not believe him. The security footage and his admission of sneaking up on Rowena with a loaded gun, his attempt to dispose of evidence, and the execution-style gunshot wound to Rowena's head all suggested a planned and deliberate murder. In November 2018, Dane Owens stood trial for Rowena's murder after years of delays, with the case being heard by a jury. The prosecution presented case with substantial evidence, leaving no doubt about Dane's guilt. They portrayed Dane as a possessive and controlling individual who turned violent when rejected. Dane's delusional fantasies led him to end Rowena's life. After only 3 hours of deliberation, the jury found Dane guilty of first-degree murder and aggravated burglary, resulting in a life sentence in Kansas. Dane was punished for taking Rowena's life due to his wounded pride. He will not be eligible for parole for 25 years, and his chances of release are low due to the brutality of his actions. He is currently serving his sentence at the Hutchinson Correctional Facility in Hutchinson, Kansas. Rowena's life was ended by someone she once loved. It's heartbreaking to think of the terrible actions of Dane, who took Rowena's life, depriving her of a bright future at such a young age. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Megan Landowski. Megan Landowski lived with her family in Portsmouth, Virginia, a bustling seaport town. Her family included her father, Chris Short, a Navy officer, her mother, Angela, and 2 other siblings. Chris Short had been transferred to a naval hospital in Portsmouth after a year stationed at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. Chris's family felt relieved when they moved there. Megan Landowski, 16 years old, was the oldest in the family. When her family moved, she quickly signed up for dance classes. Megan had a deep passion for dance and showed outstanding talent from the beginning. She started with ballet and then expanded into many different genres. Megan's mother described her as a beautiful, friendly, and talented girl. Megan adapted quickly to her new learning environment at Woodrow Wilson High School. She had an attractive personality and easily made friends with her classmates. Although she attended a prestigious high school that specialized in dance, Megan wanted to attend a regular high school so she could hang out with friends in her neighborhood. She was described as vivacious and kind, with a natural tendency to connect with people. On Thursday, April 10, 2008, Megan woke up early to go to school. She chatted with her mother about the upcoming test before going to class. After saying goodbye to Angela, Megan went to school. Angela had no idea that this would be the last time she would see her daughter alive. Megan's school day ended early, and she went home. Angela had told Megan that she expected Megan's call when she got home. Upon arriving, Megan left a voicemail detailing how her day went, reassuring Angela that she had returned safely, and ending by telling Angela she loved her. Then she continued to prepare lunch for herself. However, things took a terrifying and disturbing turn around 4 p.m. Megan's stepfather, Chris, returned home and found the door open. Although he didn't worry at first, he knew Megan had been warned about leaving the door open, so he trusted that she wouldn't leave it unattended like that. He called her name, but there was only silence. When he entered the kitchen, he was faced with a horrifying sight: Megan lying motionless on the floor. Chris quickly called the police and reported the incident. Local detective Doug Funkhauser suddenly received an alarming call reporting the murder of a young girl in town. Immediately, he rushed to the location of the crime, Roberts Court in Portsmouth. When he approached the scene of the crime, he saw horrifying signs. The bloodstains on the door handle were very clear. When he entered the kitchen, he discovered a gruesome scene. The body of a young girl lay on the floor, her body seriously injured. Megan had suffered multiple stab wounds on her back, neck, face, and throat, and her mouth was sealed with tape. For Detective Doug, this case was one of the most brutal cases he had ever investigated. An initial investigation revealed no signs of forced entry. However, a leaf found inside the home matched a bush outside a first-floor window, suggesting that the killer may have entered through that window. In the upstairs bedroom, signs of a struggle were evident on the bed. Megan's underwear was on the floor, and a box of duct tape was found under the left corner of the bed, appearing to match the tape used to bind Megan's hands and face. Forensic experts found blood on the tape and other items, which were collected for further analysis, including pillows, sheets, and blankets. Additional forensic testing indicated that the bedroom was the scene of the sexual assault, as traces of the killer's semen were found on Megan's comforter and underwear. These findings suggested that Megan had been assaulted in the bedroom before the attack downstairs. Megan was found with a large number of injuries, 43 stab wounds, including 11 post-mortem. The forensic team also reported that Megan was naked from the waist down, with her hands bound behind her back with duct tape. The murder weapon was determined to be a missing kitchen knife. Investigators later found the knife in the sink and determined that the initial attack had occurred in the bedroom, but Megan had somehow escaped down the stairs. Investigators discovered that the perpetrator left footprints during the crime and then washed his hands in the kitchen sink. A second knife used in the crime was discovered in a nearby drain. Detectives quickly searched the neighborhood for witnesses, but no one provided any useful information. The killer appeared to have escaped undetected during the day. After the shock of their daughter's murder, Angela and Chris quickly alerted the police to their suspicions regarding the identity of the killer. They suspected an old acquaintance with a troubled past and believed he may be involved in the case. This person is Robert Hickey, a former colleague of Chris's in the Navy who had sexually assaulted Megan when she was 16. Chris and Robert had worked together as technicians and had become close friends, often inviting Robert and his family to their home. Megan's behavior changed dramatically after the abuse. She became withdrawn, and her grades began to decline. Chris noticed the change and asked her what was wrong, but she was initially reluctant to talk about it. Eventually, Megan confided in Chris, revealing that Robert had been sexually assaulting her in secret. Chris was furious and immediately cut off ties with the Hickeys. He also reported the abuse to the authorities. Around the same time, Megan's parents filed a lawsuit against Robert, just 5 months before she was murdered. The trial is pending, and Megan is expected to testify against him. Robert has a lot at stake, including his reputation and his freedom. Megan expressed concern that Robert might try to harm her to prevent her from testifying, and unfortunately, it appears that her fears have come true. When police searched Robert's home, they did not find any direct evidence linking him to Megan's murder. However, upon closer inspection of his computer, they discovered that he had attempted to erase the hard drive. Investigators were able to recover a recently deleted file containing sexually explicit images of minors. This discovery led to Robert being charged with possession of child pornography and becoming the prime suspect in Megan's murder. He was brought in for questioning, and authorities hope that he will confess to the crime. Robert was visibly nervous throughout the interview, but he insisted that he was at the Navy base on the day of Megan's murder. He denied any involvement and claimed he had not left the base. However, after verifying his alibi with his colleagues, the police discovered a gap in his timeline, raising the possibility that he might have been involved in the murder. The police obtained surveillance footage from the base but found no evidence that Robert had left. Despite this, he remained a suspect. To investigate further, a DNA sample was taken from Robert to compare with the DNA found at the crime scene. The results showed no match, ruling out Robert as the killer. This discovery left the police without any leads or suspects, leaving them frustrated. They then turned their attention to Chris, who had discovered Megan's body. After taking a DNA sample from Chris, he was quickly cleared. Megan's family members, including her younger brother, Corey, were also ruled out as suspects. The autopsy revealed that the murder was extremely brutal, indicating that the perpetrator had used extreme violence against Megan. Given Megan's popularity and gentle nature, it was difficult to narrow the investigation based on hostile relationships. This made the identity of the killer even more mysterious. The investigation into Megan's case did not produce any suspects. Detectives focused on Megan's life at school and interviewed each of her friends. Megan's best friend was interviewed but did not provide any useful information. Police then spoke to other friends and acquaintances from Woodrow Wilson High School and learned that Megan had dated a few people but nothing too serious. Although these men did not appear to be suspects, police asked them to provide DNA samples as a precaution. Meanwhile, experts retested DNA from the crime scene, which suggested that the killer was likely an African American male. For 6 months, no major developments were made, but that changed when a helpful classmate provided valuable information, a list of boys with whom Megan had occasionally flirted. Police looked through the list and found that they had spoken to all of the boys on the list, except for one, a 17-year-old named Robert Lee Barnes. Megan and Robert Barnes were both in the performing arts program at Churchill High School. Megan confided in her friend that she believed Robert might have a crush on her. At school, Robert was considered an excellent violinist, and as a student, he had always earned good grades, exhibited exemplary behavior, and had no disciplinary problems. As one of Megan's friends, Robert visited Megan's home several times, showing respectful behavior during these visits, and Megan's parents were very fond of him. When the police questioned Robert about Megan, he described her as a kind and pleasant person and was shocked that someone would want to harm her. He mentioned that he and Megan had attended shows together and occasionally hung out. However, towards the end of the interview, Robert's demeanor changed when he was asked to provide a DNA sample. Unlike Megan's other classmates, who were cooperative with the request, Robert hesitated and then refused, which aroused the suspicion of the investigators. Robert said that his mother did not allow the DNA test, but the police informed him that his parents' permission was not required because he was almost 18 years old. However, Robert still refused. This refusal made the investigators feel uncomfortable and suspicious that something was wrong with Robert. Therefore, after the interview ended, the investigators suggested that he talk to his mother and try again. The day after the initial investigation, Robert contacted the authorities to request a meeting. When asked if he had obtained his mother's permission, he replied that he had not, but he had given them a piece of his chewing gum as a DNA sample. Robert removed the gum from his mouth, placed it in a rubber glove, and gave it to the investigators. Despite this, the investigators remained suspicious of Robert. The DNA lab then contacted the detective to inquire about the sample's source. After confirming that Robert had indeed placed the gum in the glove, the lab questioned whether he had been continuously monitored while providing the gum. This investigation was prompted by the surprising fact that the DNA on the gum matched that of a woman. It turned out that Robert had switched the gum he was chewing with another piece before handing it to the investigators. On October 23, 2008, Robert was called in for questioning again, this time with his mother. When confronted with the DNA findings, Robert was asked about the chewing gum. He made a critical mistake by stating, "This happened on Thursday." Up until that point, none of the individuals interviewed by the police knew the exact date and time of the murder. When the officers pointed this out to Robert, he provided an implausible explanation. According to Robert, on that Thursday, Megan had asked him to visit her home. Upon his arrival, Robert claimed to have found Megan being held at gunpoint by a masked individual. The alleged attacker held the gun to Robert, forcing him to tie Megan up. Robert then fabricated a story that he had been compelled to sexually assault Megan. He further claimed that they all went downstairs, where the attacker stabbed Megan after obtaining a knife. Ultimately, Robert stated that the attacker had forced him to inflict an injury on himself to ensure his blood would be present at the crime scene. Robert fabricated a false story to portray himself as the victim and to explain away any incriminating evidence. However, the police did not believe his account. When presented with evidence of footprints found at the scene, the investigator asked Robert why only his footprints were found and not those of the person he claimed had attacked him. Robert's mother intervened, telling Robert to stop talking and asserting that Robert was a good and innocent person. The police then took a DNA sample from Robert. The DNA analysis showed a match between Robert's DNA and the DNA found at the crime scene. As a result, Robert Barnes was arrested for the murder of Megan Landowski. According to police, Robert likely broke into the house through a window that afternoon, surprising Megan in her bedroom. He then attacked her, and when she tried to escape downstairs, he chased her, stabbing her multiple times with a kitchen knife, even after she was dead. After the crime, Robert left the scene and continued his life as if nothing had happened. Investigators believe that Robert became unhealthily obsessed with Megan, who only wanted a friendship. When Robert's romantic advances were rejected, he turned to coercion, which led to a tragic end. In September 2009, Robert accepted a plea deal that allowed him to be tried as a juvenile despite having just turned 18. He pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and aggravated sexual assault. As a result, Robert Lee Barnes was sentenced to 42 years in prison and is currently serving his sentence at Red Onion State Prison in Wise County, Virginia. Regardless of the motive behind Robert's actions, whether it was love, lust, bitterness, or the pain of rejection, none of these reasons justify his horrific crimes against the person he claimed to love and care for. Robert chose the path of destruction, taking the life of an innocent person and ruining his own life. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Mackenzie Lueck. Mackenzie Lueck was born on March 8, 1996, to Diana and Gregory Leck. Her father worked in healthcare logistics and administration, and her mother was a homemaker. Mackenzie grew up in El Segundo, a city in Los Angeles County, California, with an older brother and two younger brothers. Mackenzie attended El Segundo High School, where Schur was a member of the swim team and played water polo. Mackenzie was a hardworking student with a strong interest in art, music, and animals. Mackenzie attended the University of Utah, where she majored in kinesiology and nursing and was a member of the Alpha Kappa Omega sorority. While in college, Mackenzie shared her feminist views and switched her political orientation from major party to conservative third party. Mackenzie worked at a biotesting company in Salt Lake City. Mackenzie wanted to pursue a career in health sciences, discussed with her counselors plans to attend nursing or medical school, and expected to graduate in May 2020. The Mackenzie family lived a normal life until everything changed on June 17, 2019. On that day, Mackenzie returned to Salt Lake City, Utah, after her grandmother's funeral. She arrived at Salt Lake City International Airport around 2 a.m. and texted her mother, "Just landed and love you, Mom." When her mother Diana answered a few moments later, Diana discovered that Mackenzie's phone was turned off. Her father Gregory also tried to call Mackenzie but was routed to her voicemail, causing Mackenzie's family to become very concerned for her safety. On June 20th, Mackenzie's parents realized that her friends had not seen or heard from her either. Mackenzie's friends reported her missing to the Salt Lake City Police Department. Over the next 2 weeks, while Mackenzie's parents Diana, Gregory, and their 3 sons tried everything they could to find Mackenzie in California, Mackenzie's Alpha Kappa Omega sorority sisters organized search efforts in Utah. They even created a Facebook page called Find Mackenzie Lueck to attract national media attention to the case. As police searched for clues about Mackenzie, they discovered video footage of Mackenzie at the airport. She was then picked up by a Lyft driver and taken to Hatch Park in North Salt Lake, about 13 miles away. Police checked Mackenzie's cell phone records, confirming that Mackenzie had been at the park. Police also discovered that Mackenzie had exchanged several text messages with a person named AAE, whom she had allegedly met on a dating website and planned to meet in person. Mackenzie's last text message to AAE was sent at 2:58 a.m. Cell phone records showed that both Mackenzie and AAE were at Hatch Park at the same time. Notably, at 2:59 a.m., Mackenzie's phone stopped transmitting data or location information, indicating that the phone had been turned off. Police tracked AAE's cell phone signal, which led them from the park to his home at 547 North 1000 West in a Fair Park neighborhood. Police found that AAE's cell phone was at his home at 3:07 a.m., just 7 to 8 minutes after he picked up Mackenzie from the park. Since AAE was the prime suspect in Mackenzie's disappearance, police decided to execute a search warrant at his home. During the search, police discovered a newly dug area in the backyard. Inside this area, they found burned human bones, muscle tissue, and charred personal items. In a nearby alley, police also discovered charred fabric and other items belonging to the victim. after the DNA from the bones matched the DNA profile of the items found. Police identified the victim as Mackenzie. A neighbor reported a foul odor coming from a campfire in AAE's backyard, which was also fueled by gasoline, on June 17th and again on June 18th. This is where police found a shallow grave containing bones and tissue. Police impounded AAE's car after detecting a strong smell of gasoline and finding a red gas can in the trunk. They discovered that a can of gasoline had been purchased at a local store at 9 a.m. the day Mackenzie went missing. After arresting AAE, police checked his cell phone records, which showed AAE's phone was in Logan Canyon, a location where he buried Mackenzie's body on June 25th. Between 2:30 p.m. and 4:30 p.m. police searched the area and found freshly disturbed soil in a wooded area near the main road, where they discovered a charred human body. On July 3rd, the medical examiner confirmed that the body was that of Mackenzie. Her hands had been bound behind her back with zip ties and rope. The cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma to the left side of the skull, and her death was classified as a homicide. On October 7, 2020, AAE pleaded guilty to first-degree aggravated murder and third-degree indignity to a human body in connection with Mackenzie's death. AAE was sentenced to life in prison without parole, plus 5 years for indecent assault on Mackenzie. AAE was also charged with kidnapping another woman in March 2018, whom AAE met on a dating website. In addition, AAE was charged with 19 counts of sexual exploitation of a minor. These charges arose in August 2019 when police discovered child pornography on AAE's computer while investigating Mackenzie's death on July 2nd. The images reportedly showed children aged between 4 and 8. On October 1, 2020, AAE pleaded not guilty to these charges and the pornography charges were eventually dismissed. The tragic death of Mackenzie Lueck has had a profound impact on her family, friends, and the entire nation. Her cheerful personality, zest for life, and desire to make a positive impact were suddenly ended by a senseless act of violence. Mackenzie's story serves as an important reminder to always be cautious and safe, especially when using online dating services. Rest in peace, Mackenzie Lueck. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Brett Ryan. Brett Ryan was born in 1980 in Toronto into a large and close-knit family. There were 5 children in the family, and Brett was the second. He had 2 older brothers, Christopher and Leland, and a younger brother, AJ. Brett's parents always tried to instill the right values in their children by promoting a healthy lifestyle. Brett's father worked at a newspaper and was also a fitness trainer. His mother dedicated herself to homemaking and loved growing flowers. Brett's mother could be strict and harsh in raising her 4 sons, while his father was gentle and reserved. Each son in the family pursued his own path. After graduating from high school, Brett enrolled at the University of Toronto. However, he quickly struggled with his studies. After 2 painful breakups, Brett could not concentrate on his studies and eventually decided to drop out of university. Brett felt jealous as he watched his friends and classmates build relationships, get married, and achieve success in life. Meanwhile, he felt like he was not accomplishing anything significant, which made him feel like a failure. After getting a job as a painter, he realized that this career was not suitable for him. At the same time, Brett was concerned about his appearance, spending a lot of money on personal needs and on girls. As a result, he accumulated a large debt of up to 60,000 Canadian dollars, which he had no way to repay. When creditors started demanding money, Brett fell into a deep depression. He felt like a complete failure but did not dare to confess his problems to anyone. In desperation, Brett was determined to find a way out of his difficult situation and make a large sum of money quickly. He decided to rob a bank. On October 20th, 2007, he put his plan into action. He chose a bank near his home and created a disguise by covering his face with bandages, pretending to have an injured left arm, limping, and carrying a stack of papers. Brett robbed his first bank by pretending to be sick. He entered and approached the cash register. There, he handed over a note demanding cash and warned the clerk that he was hiding a weapon. Out of fear, the clerk quickly gave Brett the money in the cash register. The amount was only about $1,000, which Brett was not happy about, but he decided not to attract any more attention. So he took the money and left the scene. Brett was caught on security cameras during the robbery. Despite this, he was not caught initially because he avoided using the same technique and changed his disguise each time. Instead of using fake bandages to look like a sick person, he wore a fake beard and hat to hide his identity. His next bank robberies achieved different results. Throughout his 12 bank robberies, Brett accumulated more than $28,000 in cash. He was always evasive, trying to avoid the police. Finally, on June 20th, 2008, the police identified Brett, and he was arrested during his 13th attempted robbery. This surprised everyone because Brett had previously volunteered at a children's hospital and was now a robber. Brett was sentenced to 5 years in prison. During his sentence, experts conducted psychological evaluations and concluded that he showed no signs of aggression or violence. Additionally, Brett did not use illegal substances and did not suffer from mental disorders during his sentence. After 2 years, Brett was paroled for good behavior. The prison staff were impressed with him because he was a pleasant, charismatic, and hardworking young man. They felt that he had only made one serious mistake due to the pressure of debt and deserved the second chance. Brett's record showed that he was a model prisoner with a low risk of reoffending. Upon his release, Brett was required to attend a course of psychotherapy and report any problems he encountered in his family relationships or at work. This helped him avoid reoffending. However, the reality turned out to be much more complicated than Brett had anticipated. The debts were still outstanding, and he could not pay them off. Finding a job was also difficult because no one wanted to hire an ex-convict, even though he had skills in painting. In desperation, Brett declared bankruptcy. Fortunately, his parents supported him financially, allowing him to continue his studies at university, this time in information technology. Brett also continued to see a psychologist under court order and tried to stabilize his life. During therapy, Brett was advised to be more open and honest with the people around him. In September 2011, a friend of Brett's arranged a blind date with a girl named Kristen Baxter. Kristen was a physical therapist, lived alone in an apartment, and had a small dog. She also loved to travel. When Brett met Kristen, they immediately had a special connection. They quickly found they were compatible and attracted to each other. They both loved animals and traveling, which created a bond between them. Not long after, Brett and Kristen began a romantic relationship. Brett and Kristen spent a lot of time together, attending sporting events and hiking. They also went on a vacation together in the Bahamas with Kristen's family. Kristen's dog immediately took a liking to Brett, which made a good impression. Brett's life seemed to be back on track, and he no longer exhibited suspicious behavior. He longed for a quiet and cozy life with his beloved girlfriend. When Brett moved into Kristen's apartment in January 2013, their relationship entered a new phase. They began thinking about getting married. However, Brett was hiding a truth from Kristen. In reality, he was not the person she thought he was. While Brett's brothers were building their careers and becoming independent, he was just studying and living off his parents' money. He hid his real life and focused only on enjoying the vibrant city life with Kristen. They enjoyed going to cozy restaurants and swimming in the pool at night, but Brett never revealed the truth about his circumstances. Brett and Kristen often traveled to warm countries. However, their lives were turned upside down when Brett's father suddenly passed away. Brett moved in with his mother to help with the funeral arrangements and support her during this difficult time. During this period, Brett confessed to his mother, Susan, that he loved Kristen very much and dreamed of marrying her. However, he did not have enough money to buy a decent engagement ring, so he hesitated to propose. Brett's mother was touched by her son's words and gave him money to buy an expensive ring. With a luxurious diamond ring, Brett proposed to Kristen, and she accepted. The couple began to prepare for their wedding. However, Brett still had many worries about the future. He didn't know how he would support his family. He also had legal issues, bankruptcy, and debt that he hadn't disclosed to Kristen. To address these issues, Brett decided to focus on finding a decent, stable job. In early 2016, Brett finally found a good job in the IT field. He was very happy to share this news with Kristen, and they decided to celebrate with their families. However, everything changed when his new employer learned about his criminal past and fired him immediately. This took a serious toll on Brett's self-esteem. To avoid upsetting Kristen, Brett decided not to tell her about this failure. Instead, he lied and said that he would work remotely from home. Every day, when Kristen went to work, Brett would pretend to work on the computer. Kristen was very happy, thinking that Brett would start earning a lot of money and they would be able to stand on their own. Kristen started preparing for the wedding scheduled for September 16, 2016. She chose the most beautiful and expensive options they could afford. A luxurious banquet hall was booked for the ceremony, and the bachelor party before the wedding was to be held at a luxurious ski resort. The couple even started looking for a spacious and cozy house to settle down in after the wedding, as they were tired of living in a small apartment. Susan was extremely happy, thinking that her son was independent, had graduated from college, and had a high-paying job. She looked forward to the day when her son would get married and move into his own house. But the reality was completely the opposite. Brett had lied about all of this. He was trapped in his own fabricated thoughts and could not get out. In an effort to earn money, Brett took on any side job he could and even helped his mother with housework to earn money. He went to see his mother every day, looking for things to do and fixing things to get paid. Susan became suspicious when she saw her son hanging around the house all day, constantly doing this and that instead of going to work. If Brett made as much money as he claimed, why did he need these odd jobs? Susan began to ask her son difficult questions, which Brett initially tried to avoid. But then he remembered his therapist's advice about the importance of honesty, and finally dared to confess his troubles to his mother. He begged his mother for significant financial support, promising to continue looking for work. However, his mother was extremely disappointed and angry when she learned the truth. She refused to give him any money and threatened to tell Kristen everything. Brett was extremely angry at his mother's harsh words, and he feared that Kristen would leave him if she found out the truth. Brett was desperate because he didn't want to lose his girlfriend and have to move back in with his mother. He feared that if that happened, he would feel like a loser for the rest of his life. So he decided to carry out a strange plan. Unable to legally purchase a gun due to his criminal record, Brett chose to purchase a crossbow to avoid attracting unnecessary attention. He purchased the old crossbow with cash. The next day, Brett returned to his mother's house under the pretext of helping with home repairs to earn money. However, he had other intentions. On August 25, 2016, his mother, Kristen, woke up early as usual and went to work. Meanwhile, Brett stayed home and pretended to work. In reality, he was preparing for another act. To avoid suspicion, Brett created a keystroke automaton on his computer to give the impression that he was working. He also set up an automatic email function to send at a specific time to create an alibi. Next, Brett gathered all the necessary items for his disguise into a gym bag, including clothes and a wig. To avoid being caught on surveillance cameras, he sneaked out of the house through the fire escape and went to Susan's house incognito, wearing clothes and a wig so that no one would recognize him. However, when he reached the door, he took off all his disguises and went inside. Once inside, Brett tried to convince his mother to give him money. But Susan continued to refuse. A fierce argument broke out between them, with Susan demanding that Brett confess his lie to Kristen. Otherwise, she would expose him herself. As the argument became more heated, Susan sensed something was wrong. She took advantage of the moment when Brett stepped outside and called her eldest son, Chris. She begged Chris to come and help resolve the conflict with Brett. Brett returned to the garage for an important reason. He had hidden a crossbow there earlier. Once he found the weapon, he began to prepare everything for the shot. However, this required more time and effort than he had imagined. At that moment, his mother entered the garage in a rage. Brett quickly found a nearby tool and struck her twice, hitting her in the cheek and ear. She screamed in pain and shock at the sight of her own son attacking her. A fight broke out between them. During the scuffle, both fell to the floor and rolled around, knocking over everything in their path. In the chaos, Brett found a long, dirty rag, and without thinking much, he used it to strangle her. Only after carrying out this act did Brett realize that things had gone terribly wrong. His original murder plan had turned into a nightmare. He remembered that his brother Chris, who had been called by their mother, was about to arrive at the garage. Brett decided to remove his brother from the list of potential witnesses. He jumped up, grabbed the crossbow, and started preparing. A plan to kill Chris formed in Brett's mind. After preparing everything for the new crime, Brett hid in the garage, waiting for Chris. Soon, Chris entered the garage to find their mother, not knowing that he was in danger. Brett quietly approached Chris from behind and shot him in the back of the head. Chris fell immediately. Brett dragged his body close to their mother's and covered it with a tarp. Brett quickly changed his clothes and prepared to run away. However, he did not expect that his younger brother, AJ, was visiting and appeared at the door. For Brett, this was a disastrous situation. Brett began to consider his next move: run away after changing his clothes or stay and kill AJ. He feared that when his brother discovered the bodies, AJ would immediately call the police and he would be arrested. This fear drove Brett to commit another murder. After finding AJ, Brett followed him. Brett approached AJ with the intention of shooting him in the back of the head, just as he had done to Chris. However, this time things did not go as planned. AJ sensed danger and noticed that Brett was carrying a weapon. A scuffle broke out between the two brothers. During the fight, Brett attempted to injure AJ by shooting him in the neck with the crossbow. AJ screamed in pain and fled. He ran out of the house, leaving a trail of blood in the sand, and eventually collapsed from exhaustion in the driveway. It was then that Brett learned that there was another brother sleeping in the house, Leland, 39. He was awakened by AJ's terrified screams. Leland looked out the window and saw his brother covered in blood on the road. Panicked, he rushed to the phone to call 911 but couldn't make it. At that moment, Brett rushed at him in a frenzy. Leland and Brett started a fierce fight, spreading throughout the house and turning it into a bloody mess. Taking advantage of Brett's distraction, Leland sneaked out without being detected. He crawled to the neighbor's house and passed out right in front of it. The kind neighbors immediately called the police. Meanwhile, Brett angrily ran back to the yard and saw AJ, injured, trying to crawl away. Obsessed with the desire to kill his brother, Brett chased after AJ before the neighbors discovered him. However, while chasing AJ, Brett was surprised to find that Leland had told the neighbors everything. From that moment on, Brett had no chance to save himself. The police were about to arrive at the crime scene and put an end to his bloody journey. Brett's murder plan had failed. In desperation, Brett decided to surrender and returned to the house. There, he sat on the porch, holding a bottle of water, and waited for the police to arrive. When the police and ambulance arrived, paramedics confirmed that their mother and Chris had passed away. AJ still had signs of life, but his condition was critical. However, on the way to the hospital, AJ passed away due to his injuries. Leland, despite his serious injuries, survived. He was taken to the hospital for treatment and medical attention and gradually began to recover. Meanwhile, Brett was arrested at the scene of the crime and faced serious charges of first-degree murder and attempted murder of his brother. The news left Kristen reeling, especially since their wedding was only 3 weeks away. Kristen was devastated when she learned the truth about her lover. Brett's criminal past, including a robbery conviction, financial hardship, unemployment, and the horrific murder of his family, left her in disbelief. She wondered how she could have lived with this man all this time without knowing the truth. Kristen immediately called off the wedding and returned to her apartment. There, she discovered a strange device that Brett had made to create an alibi. Mistaking it for an explosive device, she panicked and called the police. The police quickly arrived at the scene, evacuated the residents of the building, and began to carefully examine the mysterious device. After a short time, they discovered that the device was just a clever invention of Brett's. Although initially concerned about the danger, the police later realized that the device was harmless. However, they were impressed by Brett's extraordinary ingenuity and care. His intelligence and inner strength were undeniable, but unfortunately, he used them for the wrong purpose. At trial, Brett pleaded guilty and made a deal with the prosecution. He admitted that his actions constituted second-degree murder and hoped for a lighter sentence. Brett explained that he only intended to use the crossbow to scare his mother and have a serious talk with her. He wanted his mother to finally understand and support him, but things got out of hand. Brett claimed that he had no intention of hurting his brothers. They were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. The prosecution believed that the defendant had planned to harm his mother from the beginning, not just stop at a conversation. They argued that Brett had brought the crossbow with the intention of killing Susan and should be held strictly responsible. As a result, he was convicted of first-degree murder of his mother and second-degree murder of his brother. The court handed down harsh sentences, 3 life terms with the possibility of parole after 25 years. In addition, Brett was sentenced to 10 years in prison for the attempted murder of his brother Leland. All sentences were to run concurrently, meaning he could only apply for early release after a quarter of a century. Brett's only surviving brother, Leland, received the sentence with relief. Despite the pain and bitterness of the loss, Leland truly respected Brett's remorse. In Leland's mind, his brother was not a bad person at heart but had lost his way in life. Brett had taken the path of deceit and was eventually mired in the quagmire of his own lies. He could no longer get out, which led to a terrible tragedy. Brett Ryan's terrifying story serves as a warning to us all. It demonstrates that small lies and the concealment of truth can lead to dire consequences. When we continue to lie, the lies grow and accumulate, becoming unmanageable. As a result, not only is the liar's life ruined, but so are the lives of their loved ones. Brett Ryan had the opportunity to change after his first prison sentence. He had the support of his girlfriend and a loving family, and he could have gone to school and found a job. However, he chose to lie, leading to a disastrous outcome and ruining more than one life. Whether Brett truly admitted his mistake or just wanted a lighter sentence is not as important as the lessons he learns while serving his life sentence. Can he look back on his life, reflect on his mistakes, and strive to become a better version of himself? Only Brett knows the answer. However, his story certainly makes us reflect on our own actions. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ariel Castro. Ariel Castro was born in 1960 on July 10 in the city of Yauco in Puerto Rico. Ariel was the third child in a poor family of 4 children, including parents Liliana Rodriguez and Pedro Castro, and sisters O'Neill, Pedro, and older sister Bonita. Ariel's family barely made ends meet and his parents were constantly arguing. Before Ariel went to school, his parents divorced. His mother Liliana took care of all the children. Now Liliana had almost nothing left to feed her children. In desperation, Liliana and her children decided to move to the United States and settled for a while in southeastern Pennsylvania in the city of Reading. However, they soon moved to the neighboring state of Ohio and eventually settled in the city of Cleveland. Soon after, Ariel's father Pedro Castro also moved to Cleveland with his new wife and their children. Pedro Castro lived near Liliana and her children. Liliana later married, and Ariel soon had 4 more siblings. Ariel attended Lincoln West High School in Cleveland, graduating in 1978. In addition, Ariel also studied music and attended church regularly with her mother and siblings in a traditional Catholic family. As a teenager, Ariel met a young girl named Grimilda Figueroa, who lived next door to Castro. The two became friends while attending school, and Ariel and Grimilda later began dating. After saving money, Ariel and Grimilda decided to move to a house on Seymour Avenue in southwest Cleveland. The 2-story, 1,300 square foot house was built in 1890 and has been remodeled several times. Inside, there are 4 bedrooms, a dining room, a bathroom, and a spacious basement. However, since moving into the new house, Ariel regularly beats Grimilda and humiliates her morally and physically. Grimilda is still naive at this time and thinks that the situation will improve after the wedding and the birth of the child. However, as time goes by, the situation only gets worse. Grimilda tries not to let anyone know about the terrible things that are happening in her life. Grimilda hides her injuries under her clothes and makes up excuses for the injuries that cannot be hidden. In 1993, Ariel beat his wife so brutally that Grimilda suffered broken ribs, nose, and both arms from falling down the stairs after being pushed by Ariel. However, Grimilda steadfastly refused to report the incident to the police. The incident was covered up. Ariel repeatedly beat Grimilda in the mid-1990s. On one occasion, Ariel caused Grimilda a serious head injury that resulted in a blood clot and a tumor that could not be surgically removed. Ariel was arrested but released just a day later. By the late 90s, Grimilda was tired of the constant beatings and living in fear. Grimilda finally decided to file for divorce, took away the appliances, and moved out of the house. Grimilda won custody of all 4 of their children, Arlene, Antonio, Angie, and Amelia. However, Grimilda's nightmare did not end there. Ariel began to pursue Grimilda for money and threatened her to return to him. Realizing that Grimilda could not handle it on her own, Grimilda finally decided to report to the police to get a restraining order against Ariel. In late April 2012, Grimilda suffered complications related to an inoperable tumor caused by a head injury. Grimilda's children were old enough to care for themselves and live their own lives, so they did not need a guardian. However, the children still maintained contact with their father Ariel. Back in the early 2000s, Ariel lived alone in a 2-story house on Seymour Avenue. Ariel worked as a school bus driver and had a passion for playing the guitar. Ariel often performed at city festivals in Latin bands. His neighbors often spoke highly of him, praising his hospitality and kind personality. However, there were many strange things in Ariel's actions that went unnoticed. That he was prosecuted several times for traffic violations while driving a school bus. He had speeding and dangerously making U-turns, for which he was fined and even suspended for a while until he was fired in early 2013 for an act that threatened the lives and health of his young passengers. Additionally, Ariel frequently changed bands because Ariel was kicked out for being late, disrupting rehearsals and concerts. Another strange thing is that after his divorce from Grimilda, he never invited anyone to his house, although Ariel often invited neighbors to barbecues in his backyard. It's hard to say how dangerous this smiling, kindly-faced Ariel was. Michelle Knight was Ariel Castro's first victim. In 2002, on August 23, Ariel decided to kidnap Michelle Knight, then 21 years old. Michelle Knight was born in 1981 and came to Cleveland. Michelle was a frequent runaway and had a history with the police. After becoming a single mother, Michelle faced the risk of losing custody of her 2-year-old child. On the day of the incident, Michelle visited a relative's house and then had to go to court, where the issue of regaining custody of her 2-year-old child had just been decided. While walking down the street, Michelle saw Ariel Castro driving up and offering her a ride. Since Michelle knew the nearby school bus driver, she didn't suspect Ariel and decided to get in his car. On the way, Ariel tells Michelle that he is taking care of puppies at home and invites Michelle to visit them and help Ariel find homes for the puppies. Michelle agrees, but as soon as she enters Ariel's house, he changes completely. Ariel becomes violent and begins hitting Michelle repeatedly. Ariel then chains her up and takes her to the basement. Over the next few days, Ariel starved Michelle and denied her water. Michelle endured constant beatings and abuse. She could not even get up and had to beg Ariel to let her go, promising not to tell anyone about it. When Michelle's mother reported her daughter missing to the police, for years the police did not prioritize the case and allocated limited resources to the investigation. Michelle's family searched for the girl themselves by contacting neighbors, friends, and concerned people. They also asked for help from Ariel, who helped post flyers around the city with Michelle's picture. However, no one knew that Michelle was being held in Ariel's basement. Ariel's second character was Amanda Berry. This girl was kidnapped in the spring of 2003. Amanda was a young girl who lived near Ariel and worked at a local restaurant. She was born on April 22, 1986 and was about to celebrate her 17th birthday. However, on April 21, 2003, Amanda mysteriously disappeared. After her shift, Amanda called home and told her sister that she would be home soon. As Amanda left the restaurant and headed to the bus stop, Ariel drove up to her and offered to give Amanda a ride home. Amanda accepted. Amanda knew Ariel's son because they had been in the same class for many years. So Amanda trusted Ariel and agreed to go with him. However, Ariel lied to her along the way, saying that Ariel needed help. When Amanda entered Ariel's house, Amanda was trapped. Ariel raped her in public, then took Amanda to the basement. There, she met Michelle, who had been kidnapped and held captive for months. Amanda was also attacked, abused, and starved for days until Amanda's body was too weak to resist. A massive search was launched after Amanda went missing. Her disappearance was widely reported in the media and Amanda's parents appeared on popular television shows such as Oprah Winfrey and Montel Williams. They shared their story and urged anyone with information about Amanda's whereabouts to contact them immediately. On one show, famous psychic Sylvia Brown was invited on. After viewing a photo of Amanda, she said that the girl had died and her body was in the water. The words troubled Amanda's parents, but the mother, Louise Miller, continued to search for her daughter until she died in March 2006 of a heart attack. In 2012, a criminal named Robert Wolford suddenly confessed to Amanda's murder and offered to show them where her body was buried. Robert led police to a vacant lot in West Cleveland, claiming that he had buried Amanda there. However, a lengthy search failed to uncover any trace. Robert was later found to have lied for fame and television, leading to his being sentenced to an additional 5 years in prison for perjury and obstructing justice. In April 2004. This time, Ariel chose Gina De Jesus, a 14-year-old girl in his daughter's class. Ariel met Gina and another girlfriend after school. After chatting for a while, the two girls decided to go home separately. When they reached the corner of West 105th Street, Ariel met Gina and offered to take Gina home. Since Gina had known Ariel since childhood, having long been the father of her best friend, Gina got into Ariel's car without suspecting anything. Although it was daytime, there were no witnesses to the kidnapping because the streets were deserted at that time. In addition, Gina took the initiative to get into Ariel's car, so there was no easily detectable conflict. The story of Gina's disappearance was aired on Fox TV's America's Most Wanted and was re-aired twice in 2005 and 2006. Ariel also posed as a volunteer looking for missing girls. When she brought Gina home, Ariel treated Gina similarly to Michelle and Amanda. Abused, sexually assaulted, and locked in the basement. It is believed that the kidnapping was carried out by a middle-aged Hispanic man. Was seen by a passerby. There was even a sketch that looked very similar to Ariel. During the 10 years of their captivity, Ariel constantly abused her victims. They were often starved, attempting to break their spirits and destroy their self-esteem. Severe punishments were also carried out if the three girls did not comply. Michelle, the oldest captive, suffered the most. Ariel would not spare her and would often beat Michelle to intimidate the other girls, forcing them to obey without asking any questions. After years of captivity in the dark and damp basement, Ariel moved them to a room on the second floor, which overlooked the courtyard. During her captivity, Michelle became pregnant at least 5 times. However, each time she showed signs of pregnancy, Ariel brutally attempted to terminate the pregnancy, starving Michelle and kicking her in the stomach until Michelle miscarried. After one brutal torture, Michelle almost died from severe blood loss. Despite this, Ariel remained completely indifferent and refused to let her call a rescue vehicle. The girls were not allowed to bathe more than once a week. To use the toilet, they had only a bucket of water, which Ariel rarely emptied. Ariel only fed the girls once a day but constantly beat and abused them. One day, Ariel gives the girls a puppy, but a week later, Ariel brutally kills the dog in front of them as punishment for Michelle's disobedience. Gina, in 2006, Amanda realizes she is pregnant and is horrified by the image of Ariel beating her to induce a miscarriage. Ariel this time let Amanda get pregnant and give birth. In preparation for the birth, he bought a special inflatable float. In December 2006, Amanda gave birth to a daughter named Jocelyn. Although the baby was born weak, she was lucky to survive. As Jocelyn grew older, the girls began to care for her and create a close environment for her. This helped them temporarily forget the difficult situation they were in. Ariel also changed significantly after having his daughters. Ariel began giving the 3 girls he kidnapped small gifts and sometimes letting them out into the yard with Jocelyn, but always under close supervision. Jocelyn was developing well, speaking clearly, and being taught to read, write, and count by her mother. Outwardly, she appeared healthy, well cared for, and well fed. Despite being imprisoned for years under Ariel's relentless control, the victims attempted to escape many times, but each time they were brutally punished, but the girls never gave up hope. However, on May 6, 2013, Ariel left the house and forgot to lock one of the interior doors. This gave Amanda an opportunity. She left the room and went to the window that looked out onto the street. When Amanda saw a neighbor walking past the house, Amanda began banging and screaming at the window. A man heard a strange noise and stopped, thinking someone needed help. Another neighbor also heard the screams and decided to call emergency services. While waiting for the police to arrive, the men broke the lock on the front door and helped Amanda and her young daughter escape. When the police arrived, Amanda told them that her name was Amanda Berry and that she had been kidnapped 10 years ago. Amanda also said that 2 other kidnapped girls were being held in a house, in other apartments. All 3 were rescued and taken to hospital the same day. Amanda, her younger daughter Jocelyn, and Gina were not in critical condition, but Michelle had suffered severe physical and mental damage from the constant abuse. Michelle lost hearing in one ear and almost lost sight in her left eye. Many of Michelle's bones were bent and would not heal, requiring plastic surgery to restore the shape of her disfigured face. After the trauma and forced abortion, Michelle was unable to have children. When police received a report of 3 missing girls and a baby found in Ariel's home, Ariel Castro was arrested in a McDonald's parking lot just an hour later. Ariel's brothers, O'Neill and Pedro, were also arrested on suspicion of involvement, as they had been frequent visitors to Ariel's home. However, they were quickly released due to lack of evidence linking them to the case, as the victims had confirmed. Ariel was charged with forcible kidnapping, assault, battery, forcible confinement, cruelty, and taking the life of an unborn child. Ariel could have received a common law conviction. However, the prosecution required a death sentence. Ariel agreed to cooperate with the investigation and pleaded guilty. Ariel would recount all the events that took place in his home. In return, he would not be sentenced to death, but instead to life in prison. Surprisingly, Ariel recalls in great detail the days of kidnapping the girls and bringing them into his home. Ariel recounted all the torture and abuse he had inflicted on his victims, but blamed the girls for unwittingly agreeing to get into Ariel's car and condemned himself to such a fate. On August 1, 2013, Ariel was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. On July 9, 2013, Michelle Knight, Amanda Berry, and Gina De Jesus began a new life after being released from the Insanity's custody. After his conviction, Ariel was transferred to a rehabilitation center in Orient, Ohio, where he was closely monitored. However, on September 3, 2013, Ariel was found dead in his cell. At the time, Ariel was 53 years old. Ariel Castro's family members have apologized to the victims and their families. Michelle Knight wrote a book titled Life After Darkness: Finding Healing and Happiness After the Cleveland Kidnapping in 2018. Gina De Jesus also published a memoir titled Hope, a memoir of survival in Cleveland. There are also multiple documentary projects and 2 feature films about the terrifying kidnapping mission. Hi there, investigators. It's time to uncover the truth behind another case. The case of Zara Alina. Zara Alina was born in England in the winter of 1986. As the eldest of 5 children, Zara's birth held great significance, symbolizing her mother's aspirations for a better future. Additionally, she was the first granddaughter of Radha Parvin, a distinction that earned her special respect and status within the family. Growing up, Zara was doted on by her relatives and raised in a multi-generational household. Despite their financial struggles, Zara's parents prioritized her education, believing it would provide her with a good life. Zara's family had big plans for her future, but their hopes were overshadowed by the dangers and difficulties that surrounded them, putting Zara's safety at risk. Zara had an unrelenting passion and thirst for life from a very young age. This led her to develop a love for tap dancing, a form of self-expression where each step brought out a rhythm that evoked a sense of harmony. Additionally, and swimming, which gave her a sense of freedom from the monotony of daily life. Her exquisite style and artistic approach to fashion allowed her to express her dreams through her outfits. However, these pursuits were just the beginning of her journey. Her first experience with skating ignited a new sense of freedom within her. Skating evolved into more than just a hobby for her. It became a powerful outlet for self-expression, allowing her to connect with her deepest emotions and inner self. Those close to Zara were unsurprised when she shared her aspiration to become a lawyer, driven by a desire to protect and support others. Her warm personality spread happiness and positivity, making those around her feel uplifted and inspired. Zara's eyes sparkled, and her gaze was captivating. Her curly black hair added to her striking appearance. She has a magnetic appeal, combining qualities such as passion, kindness, and courage, along with undeniable charm. As a teenager, she had the chance to explore England, visiting museums and galleries that fueled her interest in art and culture. Her travels showcased independence and unrelenting passion for knowledge and discovery. Following her initial trips, she later traveled to other parts of Europe. These adventures show that she inherited her family's passion for discovery and exploration of new things. Zara's aunt, Farah, was a significant influence on her. Unlike many others who chose to settle in the UK, Farah settled in Portugal. What captivated Zara was her aunt's work as a psychotherapist, particularly her involvement with women's organizations. As a result, Zara made it a point to visit her aunt on multiple occasions. Zara began turning her dreams into a reality when she earned admission to the University of Westminster immediately after high school graduation. She dedicated herself to pursuing her objectives, all while taking care of her mother and grandmother at the same time. Although she was short, she had endless energy and a deeply passionate personality. Zara is a compassionate person who has positively impacted the lives of many refugees forced to flee their homes due to conflict, she using her influence to speak out about their stories. She also volunteered at community canteens, aiding the homeless. Zara has a remarkable talent for understanding what others need, and she always makes time for them a priority in her busy schedule. Her easygoing personality made her a delight to be around. She frequently visited her aunt, Smee Naz, who lived nearby, often seeking her help with exam preparation, but their study sessions inevitably turned into laughter-filled moments. Those who knew Zara remember that she brought happiness wherever she went. Moreover, she was diligent, covering her own expenses and providing support to her family. Zara was a familiar face at a local clothing store, where she worked and interacted with everyone in the community, from teenagers to the elderly. Her kindness and willingness to help others were notable traits. Despite being talkative, she was a good listener and extended her generosity to all living beings, especially cats. She would often spend her own money to care for stray cats, taking them to the vet or convincing neighbors to adopt them. Zara's friend, Sanji Naira, described her as radiant and thought that her most significant gift was her ability to share optimism with others. Whenever Sanji was down, he would turn to Zara for help. Zara had a special person in her life, Carissa Peters, who was more than just a friend. They formed a strong bond as they fought together for justice and women's rights, a common goal that forged a lasting friendship despite life's obstacles. They felt a strong sense of comfort and familiarity in each other's homes and maintained a daily phone routine, using this time to share news, discuss their thoughts, and make plans for the future. After passing her exams and completing her law internship in 2002, Zara had the opportunity to work at the Crown Prosecution Service. This was a significant step toward realizing her dream of becoming a full-fledged lawyer. To achieve this, Zara persevered with her work despite facing many difficulties, including worries from her mother and grandmother, as well as financial struggles. This achievement was significant for her and for the people who believed in, supported her through the challenges she faced on her path to a better life. On her first day at the new job, Zara felt an overwhelming sense of happiness. She shared a smiley selfie with friends and family, as if announcing the start of a new chapter in her life to the world. This new job was the final piece in the puzzle of her dreams, a culmination of years of hard work. Although being an administrator might seem like a secondary role to some, it was a significant milestone for Zara. At 35 years old, she entered a new phase of her life, which sparked in her a sense of excitement and determination that filled her with a clear direction and goal. This wasn't just another working day. It marked the beginning of a new era in her life, one where she felt truly fulfilled and happy. The new job boosted Zara's confidence, and she felt it was time to start her own family. She envisioned her children living happy, protected lives filled with love and harmony. With each passing day, Zara saw herself moving closer to her dream of having a family. Her life was busy with work, volunteering, friends, and support from her mother and grandmother, who shared her home and provided care when needed. Despite her packed schedule, Zara enjoyed walking and valued her freedom of movement. She didn't let small things hold her back and would often carry a spare pair of shoes in her bag to change into sneakers when needed. Zara believed that women should be able to move freely without any obstacles or restrictions. However, a man named Jordan McSweeney, who lived nearby, posed a threat to Zara's freedom. Jordan was a few years younger than Zara, and his origins were unknown. One Saturday evening, after the sun had set, Zara was on her way to meet a friend. Despite not being in the mood, but she chose not to cancel, honoring her commitment. Zara was recognized for being extremely reliable and keeping her commitments, especially to her friends. Before leaving, she called Aunt Farah, but this time, a hint of anxiety crept into her voice. Aunt Farah cautioned Zara to be careful, and although she wasn't venturing far from home, the evening atmosphere felt unusual and unpredictable. Zara assured herself that she was familiar with every part of the city and that people knew who she was. Nevertheless, something about this evening unsettled her, making her heart beat faster, and she decided to exercise extra caution. Zara met her friend at the Ilford Big Spoon, a local bar on London's West End, at the scheduled time. Ilford in London is a vibrant and culturally diverse neighborhood ideal for evening meals and socializing. One Saturday evening, Zara and her friend came to this area. They then headed to another bar, where Zara had a couple of glasses of water. Meanwhile, Jordan was at a nearby nightclub, having one drink after another. As he drank, an idea formed in his mind, and he decided to act on it. He was determined to find a woman to attack that night. Security cameras captured Jordan's behavior at the club's entrance, where he would hug and try to kiss women without their consent. He was particularly aggressive with one employee, despite her clear discomfort. Eventually, he was kicked out of the club around 11 p.m., and his behavior was recorded on camera. After leaving the club, cameras continued to capture Jordan's actions as he walked down Romford Street towards the park. As Jordan walked, he spotted a woman and began to follow her. Jordan approached her, and she tried to avoid him by entering a store. However, Jordan waited for her outside, and when she left the store, he followed her again. He then crossed the street, keeping her in sight. When the woman entered her house, Jordan was forced to continue on his way. According to security footage, around 2 a.m. on Cranbrook Street, Jordan noticed another woman approaching him. Suddenly, Jordan quickened his pace, approaching a woman. However, two passing witnesses noticed his suspicious behavior, which was captured on video. Despite this, the woman managed to return home safely, leaving Jordan surprised and frustrated. He then returned to Cranbrook Street, having been unsuccessful. Around the same time, Zara and her friend decided to leave the bar and head home. It was 2 a.m. Her friend took a taxi, but Zara chose to walk, given the short distance and pleasant weather. As they parted ways, Zara began walking down Cranbrook Street, a residential area just a 10-minute walk from her house. It was then that Jordan spotted her. According to Chief Inspector Dave Williams, Jordan had a clear intention that night, to attack a woman, regardless of the location. Cranbrook Street remained busy, even in the early hours, with a steady flow of traffic. Jordan had a history of offenses dating back to 2006 to 2009, for which he was sentenced in a Kent juvenile court at the age of 13. In August 2010, at the age of 17, he was found guilty of assaulting a girl, causing her to suffer a swollen eye. He received a 4-month detention and correction period as a result. 11 years after his initial offense, Jordan committed another crime against a woman, resulting in a 3-year ban from approaching her, either directly or indirectly. By 2010, he had a total of 28 convictions for 69 different offenses. These offenses included theft, assault on both police officers and the general public, motor vehicle theft, traffic infractions, committing crimes while out on bail, and shoplifting. Jordan used a social media platform to boast about his extensive collection of weapons and glorify a life of crime. He shared various photos and quotes, as well as fake images claiming the FBI was searching for him. After being imprisoned for crimes including criminal damage, racially aggravated harassment, and carrying a bladed weapon, Jordan was released on parole on June 17, 2022. One of the conditions of his parole was to regularly meet with his assigned parole officer. Following his release, Jordan resided in a van on St. Valentine Street, located in a 130-acre park in the Gun Hill area of London's Redbridge district, the largest green space in the region. Jordan broke all the rules of his parole and missed 2 scheduled meetings with his parole officer. As a result, the authorities decided not to show him any mercy. On June 22, 2022, the parole service started the process to send Jordan back to prison, but they didn't notify the police until 2 days later. On the morning of Saturday, June 25, 2022, police went to his mother's house to arrest him, only to find he was not there. In the early hours of June 26, 2022, a horrific crime occurred in Ilford. Zara was discovered on the sidewalk, displaying signs of abuse, with her belongings scattered around her. Her body showed evidence of severe injuries, her clothes were torn, and her eyes indicated a desperate struggle for survival. A passerby immediately recognized the gravity of the situation and began administering chest compressions and CPR in an attempt to save Zara's life. Despite the efforts of passers-by and emergency medical responders, Zara's injuries proved too severe. She fought for her life but ultimately passing away at 9:58 a.m. on Sunday. At approximately 11 a.m., security cameras in the park captured Jordan disposing of evidence, including his clothes, with an air of indifference and calmness. This behavior suggested that the act of violence was premeditated rather than random. The police swiftly responded and visited Zara's grandmother, asking her to identify her granddaughter from video footage taken at the bar. Upon confirmation of Zara's identity, the police informed her grandmother about the incident. Zara's uncle Qasim then contacted other family members, including Aunt Farah in Portugal, to break the news. Farah recalled receiving the distressing call on Saturday night, which prompted her to immediately travel to London. The family was deeply shocked and struggling to cope with the intense sadness of Zara's passing. Concurrently, detectives initiated an investigation in the area where Zara's body was found. They began by gathering footage from surveillance cameras to reconstruct the attacker's movements. The combination of video evidence and bloody fingerprints discovered near the crime scene enabled the identification of Jordan as the primary suspect. Utilizing a video surveillance system, the police tracked Jordan's location and obtained images of him. Inspector Dave dispatched an officer to Gun Hill to verify if anyone recognized Jordan. The operation yielded swift results, as Jordan was found sleeping in his van shortly thereafter. The authorities immediately arrested Jordan, who was found with blood-stained clothes and shoes that he was trying to dispose of. Despite lengthy interrogations, he refused to speak or reveal any information about himself. Meanwhile, new video footage emerged, allowing police to piece together the incident surrounding the crime. The incident led parole officer Justin Russell to criticize the handling of Jordan's case, highlighting a series of errors. Jordan has a criminal history dating back to the age of 16 and has been in prison several times, making him a subject at high risk of committing a crime. After being released from detention, he missed several scheduled supervision appointments. Authorities failed to take prompt action to return him to prison. Zara's family described the last few days as incredibly shocking, acknowledging that their loss was irreparable. However, in the face of such grief, they were touched by the warmth and kindness people have shown. The family faced a significant amount of work and needed to find the strength to cope. Aunt Farah took charge of communicating with the media and meeting with the police. Even though they were dealing with their own shock and grief, the family understood that taking control of the situation was crucial to protect Zara from possible accusations by some media outlets. A preliminary hearing for the Jordan case occurred on July 1, 2022. A subsequent hearing was scheduled for September 30, 2022, to prepare testimonies for the trial. However, the trial was postponed because Jordan did not appear on the scheduled day. On July 2, a memorial service was held for Zara, organized by her family. The service took place along the route Zara would have taken home, representing her final, unfinished journey. Many attendees wore white to symbolize a silent walk. Over 120 organizations that specialize in supporting women attended, showing solidarity in the fight against violence. These organizations collaborated with Zara Alina's family and publicly pushed for justice and accountability. They stressed that it's crucial to address violence against women and stopping perpetrators from committing such acts. During a preliminary hearing at East London Court in Walthamstow, crime scene investigator Nadia Persat testified. She stated that local police officers could have done more to locate Jordan before he attacked Zara. Persat believes the jury should investigate this matter further. On November 16, 2022, Jordan failed to appear at the hearing, despite being informed that his attendance was mandatory. As a result, a video call was arranged, during which he pleaded guilty. Prosecutor Oliver Glasgow argued that Jordan would be unfit for bail, and Judge Chima Grave agreed. The judge postponed the verdict until December 14 of the same year. However, as that date approached, Jordan failed to appear in court. Despite his absence, Jordan was eventually convicted and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 33 years for the murder of Zara Alina. Jordan and his representatives appealed the sentence, which was subsequently reduced to 33 years in prison. The judge took into account that Zara was unconscious at the time of her death and therefore did not experience any suffering, which was a key factor in the decision to reduce the sentence. For months after the incident, it was revealed that Jordan had a personal relationship with a 32-year-old woman who worked at the Belmarsh Correctional Facility in South London. The woman, who was not a direct employee of the prison services but worked at the facility, was arrested and investigated for suspected misconduct in a public office. Zara Alina's family still fondly remembers her with love and pride. Her aunt, Farah, continues to advocate against violence towards women and girls. In March 2023, Farah participated in a march organized by various groups to raise awareness about the issue. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Sonda Diameter. In December 2018, a group of college students brought their 20-year-old friend Sonda Dia to the emergency room in critical condition. He was unresponsive, extremely pale, and had a body temperature of 27 degrees Celsius. This was unusual because Sonda was a healthy and active young man with no previous health problems. The medical team ran several tests, which revealed that Sonda had hypernatremia, a life-threatening condition caused by too much sodium in the body. Normally, an adult consumes about 2 grams of sodium per day, but Sonda's body contains 160 grams, equivalent to about 2 months' worth of sodium. The medical team asked Sonda's friends what had happened, but they simply shrugged, avoided eye contact and pretended not to know about Sonda's condition. It was clear that something was wrong. Despite the efforts of medical professionals to save him, Sonda, 20, died of multiple organ failure. The autopsy revealed the initial findings. The pathologist examined Sonda's stomach to understand the cause of the seemingly healthy college student's sudden death. To the doctor's surprise and shock, he discovered that he had not eaten or drank any food or water for the past 2 days. Instead, his stomach contained foreign objects such as goldfish from an aquarium, the head of a rat, and the entire head of an eel. This indicated that Sonda had suffered horrific experiences before his death. The case attracted a lot of media attention, quickly becoming an international topic of discussion. Talks broke out about universities covering up shocking student misconduct and the lack of responsibility of the children of wealthy families. A student association called Heeringa was closely monitored. Heeringa, founded more than 70 years ago, is symbolized by a Flemish lion. The secret society has about 30 active male members, mostly law, engineering, and business students from prestigious families. Heeringa is one of the most prestigious and sought-after groups at the prestigious Catholic University of Leuven in Belgium, with only 2 or 3 new members admitted each year. The secret society is surrounded by rumors, which makes it all the more mysterious and mysterious. It is like an elite group of students with a lot of power and influence on campus. The Heeringa Student Secret Society has begun planning its annual initiation ceremony for new members. The ceremony includes a unique and daring menu, starting with appetizers such as roasted grasshoppers and cockroaches, followed by a main course of rats and raw fish. Dessert is a mix of coffee and a banned substance. A disturbing photo of a Heeringa fraternity's initiation ceremony has gone viral. The photo shows the group's leaders dressed in worn clothes, while 4 new members are kneeling. 2 of the new members are pictured with a gun pointed at their heads, a pistol, and a rifle. The photo raises many questions. What other types of rituals does this secretive group conduct? What exactly are the events that take place inside the fraternity? Considering the backgrounds of many of its members, parents, politicians, lawyers, prominent doctors, and business leaders, what would they do to protect their children if something truly happened seriously? Sonda never had any aspirations of joining the Heeringa fraternity. Instead, he was a young man born in Belgium to a Senegalese father who sought asylum in the country a few years before he was born. As an immigrant, Sonda's father worked hard to ensure his 2 sons could live a good life. He knew that because of the color of his skin, his children would have to work twice as hard to gain the same respect and career opportunities as native Belgians. Sonda's father, Dia, worked long hours at a factory, spent many nights mastering the local language, and slept or stayed up all night to help his son study. His only desire was for his sons to succeed in life. From a young age, Sonda understood the importance of working towards his goals. He realized that success will not come easily and required perseverance and hard work. As he grew up, Sonda had a close friend named Ferry, who lived nearby. The 2 shared interests such as cycling, comics, and dreams of going to college, finding a good job, saving money, and eventually moving to Japan. They even promised to be lifelong friends and visit Japan together one day. However, fate had other plans for Sonda, and he will never have the chance to visit his dreamland. As a teenager, Sonda had many friends. He had an innate ability to excel in various activities, such as solving complex math problems and playing soccer, which surprised his friends. Despite his special talents, Sonda was loved by everyone for his easygoing and charming personality. He was sociable and easy to get along with, which made it easy for him to make friends. After completing high school, Sonda made his family proud by becoming the first person to attend a prestigious university, the University of Leuven. His father was extremely happy with this achievement, which exceeded his dreams. Although the university was close to home, Sonda chose to live in a dormitory. He pursued civil engineering and was determined to get a master's degree in the field. Sonda's maturity and ambition drove him to make his father proud. His ultimate goal was to graduate, secure a high-paying job, and allow his father to retire, repaying the sacrifices he had made for his children's future. By 2018, Sonda was in his third year of a 5-year program and was already thinking about his career after graduation. In order to achieve his goal of securing a high-paying job to support his family and pay the bills, he stayed away from parties and focused on finding a job. Realizing that his skin color could be a hindrance in a predominantly European industry, and with his high academic achievements, communication skills, and hard work, he realized that building relationships was important. This realization leads him to consider joining the Ryuzgam, a group that has important connections and is essential to his career. Joining the Ryuzgam seems to be a strategic decision. Many of its members come from prominent families, which makes Sonda's decision to apply a surprise to his friends, except for his brother, who understands the potential career advantages of the organization. However, his childhood friend Ferry has reservations about these groups and even tries to dissuade Sonda from joining, seeing it as a potentially dangerous move. If Ferry had known the tragic outcome that would befall Sonda, he would never have stopped trying to stop him. Sonda's decision to join Ryuzgam was not an impulsive one, he considered it carefully. With 2 years left until the end of his studies in 2018, he weighed the pros and cons before making his final decision. Sonda was then one of 10 students who successfully passed Ryuzgam's rigorous selection process. Of these 10, only 3, including Sonda, advanced to the final selection stage. In the first stage, Ryuzgam members screen out candidates who do not match their interests, personalities, or communication styles. Once the final 3 are narrowed down, the real challenge begins. We'll spend 2 months rigorously evaluating the 3 selected, culminating in a 2 to 3 day selection ceremony. During this intense evaluation process, the recruits are subjected to constant, relentless humiliation and complete dependence on the members of the Ryuzgam society. Sonda learns about the brutal initiation rituals of the society, but he is willing to go through with it for the promise of a better future. Like the other 2 candidates, Sonda understands that the process will be difficult and push them to their limits. However, no one anticipates risking their lives in such situations. Sonda's school friend, who belongs to another society, has his own views on the Ryuzgam initiation activities. He sees it as a challenging test of endurance, brotherhood, and self-control. Although he admits that it is difficult, he believes that it is a necessary experience and will ultimately be rewarding. However, Sonda has a very horrifying experience. He is forced to drink too much alcohol. What was even more disturbing was that he was forced to drink the urine of existing members of the society. Sonda and the other newcomers were constantly insulted. Sonda had the worst of it. He was ridiculed for the color of his skin, which made his experience even more unpleasant. In October 2018, the society held a large event at the Student Union building. New members, including Sonda, were forced to kneel and take turns drinking large amounts of strong alcohol. Despite this, the newcomers were still forced to clean up the place. They stumbled across the floor, trying to clean up their own and others' vomit. The experience was traumatic and humiliating for Sonda and the other new members. That night, the 3 new members were ordered to clean up, but the Ryuzgam brothers had other plans. They decide that only the dark-skinned man, Sonda, will be cleaned, citing historical precedent where dark-skinned men served white men. Sonda feels powerless to protest, but he is determined to overcome it. Knowing that this situation will eventually end, Sonda worked hard to be accepted into the society, but at the age of 20, he was still quite naive. Despite the pain he had gone through, Sonda continued to attend the society's meetings. Sonda loved his father, who had sacrificed a lot for his education, and Sonda was determined to make him proud. Sonda hoped that the humiliation would end once he passed the final hurdle. The Ryuzgam Society, which has a history of over 70 years, had only 2 members of African descent. In 2015, a dark-skinned student was inducted, and Sonda was about to become the second person to undergo the final initiation ceremony, also known as baptism. On December 4, 2018, the initiation process for new members began at 4 p.m. In the first challenge, 3 candidates, including Sonda, wear long, flowing white robes and walk into town with bouquets of flowers. Their goal is to sell as many flowers as possible by the end of the challenge. The person who sells the fewest flowers is punished. These punishments include drinking yogurt and other unpleasant substances. Sonda ends up in last place, selling 30 fewer roses than his competitors. This leads to his punishment, where he is forced to drink a significant amount of alcohol, affecting his ability to speak. The initiation moves into the second phase. The new members, now kneeling, are asked simple questions. However, by 7 p.m., the members of the association have become less tolerant of Sonda's inability to answer these questions clearly. Unsurprisingly, he is defeated by the other competitors and faces further punishments. His punishment was to drink a bottle and a half of gin. His body, not used to the large amount of alcohol, began to react painfully. His stomach was filled with the alcohol he had drunk. Sonda's health quickly deteriorated, leaving him unable to walk, talk, or move, as he faced severe dehydration and passed out repeatedly. Surprisingly, this incident took place in a public place, right on the sidewalk in front of a cafe in the city square. However, no passers-by intervened or called the police for help. At 9 p.m., the third challenge, called Endure the Night, began. The student council took the new recruits to their dormitory, where the 18 student council brothers continued to torture them relentlessly. This time, the participants were required to drink as much beer as possible. By the end of the ordeal, all 3 participants were unconscious, although they were still breathing. However, this did not stop the continued abuse. According to the order's custom, when someone faints, they are urinated on by the order's members. A video was recorded of these actions at 11:40 p.m., but the perpetrators attempted to delete the footage. When the first day of the event ended, the new members were taken to their quarters and violently thrown onto their beds. The water supply was cut off as a prank. The initiates' belongings were vandalized with ketchup and chocolate, and they were locked up. This meant that if any of them woke up, they would not have access to water to relieve their dehydration, having consumed a potentially fatal amount of alcohol. This was just the beginning of a week-long initiation ceremony at one of the country's most esteemed universities. But the most traumatic experiences were yet to come. The next day, December 5, 2018, at around 10:30 a.m., the members of the order were ready to begin the final stage of the initiation ceremony. They woke up the 3 new members, loaded them into a car, and drove out of the city to a remote village about an hour away. One of the members of the order had a small, isolated house surrounded by dense forests, ideal for keeping their activities secret. Along the way, they stopped several times to purchase the necessary items for the ceremony. They visited a pet store to buy items such as aquarium fish, eels, live rodents, as well as bird and dog food from a pet store. They then stopped at a supermarket to buy various products, including fish sauce. However, this sauce is high in sodium and is not usually consumed in large quantities. They also bought duck eggs, sardines, clams, shrimp paste, mussels, and other seafood products. During their stop, a professor approached the group of students and noticed that one of the students was in need of help. She expressed her concerns to the society members and even suggested calling the police. However, the society members, quickly convincing her that the student was simply drunk and in shock, stated that the initiation ceremony was over and that they would help him recover by giving him a cold shower. This seemed to allay the professor's concerns. The group then went to a cabin in the woods. The police have reconstructed the details of what happened next through the recovered deleted footage and some evidence. The truth about the events that took place in that forest is still unclear. For several hours, the three beginners had to dig a large hole, which they were then placed in. Other members of the student union surrounded the hole. They filled it with cold water and live eels. In Belgium, the average temperature in December is around +3 to +7 degrees Celsius. When the newcomers start shivering from the cold, the members of the society urinate on them from above, a strange act that is said to warm them. At this point, Sando was dehydrated and still drunk from the night before. Even if he wanted to get up and leave, he couldn't. Normally, if a new initiate wanted to stop, he would just ring a bell placed at the edge of the pit, but this time the bell had been removed, leaving Sanda with no way to indicate that he wanted to stop. His physical condition, unable to stand or speak, left him helpless. The three new members, exhausted and drunk, were forced to sit in ice water and endure the urination and defecation of the members of the order. They were then forced to bite the heads of rats and eels that lived in the water and drink fish oil. After 6 hours of enduring these brutal conditions, Sanda's body began to weaken and he passed out. Finally, he was taken out of the water, dressed in dry clothes, and placed next to the fire. As he curled up on the ground for 2 hours, the initiation ritual continued around him. As Sanda's health deteriorated, instead of seeking immediate medical help, the fraternity members spent their time taking pictures and recording Sanda's painful images and sounds. Sanda's body was now reacting violently to the excessive sodium intake, leading to high blood pressure and a nosebleed. Sanda then passed out. Time passed. It wasn't until 8:57 p.m. that one of the fraternity members decided to call an ambulance. The students then drove Sanda to the hospital, but instead of placing him safely in the back seat, they deliberately placed him in the trunk to avoid dirtying the car's interior. Upon arriving at the hospital, the association members deliberately withheld important information from the medical team regarding Sanda's diet and recent alcohol consumption. After dropping him off and handing him over to the medical team, the group of students left immediately, saying that the ceremony would resume as soon as Sanda was discharged from the hospital. A decision that did not take much care of Sanda's health. While medical professionals were investigating the cause of his condition, Sanda's internal organs began to fail. He was eventually transferred to Antwerp University Hospital for more advanced care and better facilities. There, he fell into a coma and Sanda's heart stopped, and the 20-year-old tragically passed away. The cause of death was determined to be high levels of sodium in his body due to his excessive consumption of fish sauce during the ritual. This prompted the hospital to notify the police, who immediately opened an investigation into the circumstances surrounding Sanda's death. As news of Sanda's death spread, 2 other ritual participants were rushed to the hospital at 10:40 p.m. after their conditions worsened. Their parents also rushed to the hospital upon learning of their child's serious condition. Meanwhile, the members of the cult attempted to cover their tracks by destroying all evidence. They filled in a trench used in the ritual, cleaned up the room where they used ketchup and chocolate, turned on the water supply, and deleted incriminating messages, photos, and videos from their phones. However, when the police arrived, they were still able to recover the deleted data from the cult members' mobile devices. The investigation into Sanda's death has been difficult, despite the considerable amount of evidence that has been collected. The members involved belonged to powerful families whose parents quickly sought legal representation. Although the evidence linking the 18 members of the student body to Sanda's death grew stronger, the investigation dragged on and was repeatedly thwarted by powerful parents. All 18 students deleted their social media profiles and limited their communication, speaking only through their lawyers. Following Sanda's tragic death, the Reusgum student body was eventually dissolved, and the university disciplined the students involved, requiring them to complete 30 hours of community service. Despite the severity of the incident, none of the students were expelled. The group of 18 completed their studies without any significant consequences. A group of teachers protested the lenient punishment, writing an open letter in support of harsher punishments for the group, but no additional measures were taken against the students. The legal process of the case was completed in July 2020. However, the lawyers for the Heeringa members tried to reframe the case as a tragic accident caused by Sonda's poor health. It was not until May 26, 2023, that the court finally issued its verdict. The court found 18 Heeringa students guilty of manslaughter and mistreatment. Each member was fined €400, ordered to perform community service, and ordered to compensate the victim's family about €30,000. The court decided not to reveal the identities of the students responsible in order to protect their future. The relatively light sentences caused widespread outrage, leading to protests in several cities. However, while these protests took place, the outcome remained the same.